You are now entering a dangerous liberty zone where God-given natural rights are held sacred and exercised. This is your warning. Tyranny, fascism, and censorship will not be tolerated. Ideas will be exchanged freely. Rigorous debate and open discourse is encouraged. If you are weak and your beliefs are fragile, you should leave now. Prepare yourself. We are now live on the Dangerous Liberty Podcast. All right, folks, welcome to another episode of the Dangerous Liberty Podcast, where we know that safety at the expense of liberty is slavery. I want to welcome everybody. Make sure you like, subscribe, all that good stuff, all the things I'm supposed to say. I just want to say hi to Mike out there. We got Paul Renee, we got Jason, we got Bravo 4 Solutions. And if you haven't said hello, make sure you guys say hello. But we got a really special episode for you tonight. It's going to be fun, going to be interesting, going to be educational. Yeah. So with that said, Summer, how was your week this week?
It's good so far.
Yeah. I went out and Noah got a new dirt bike. He upgraded dirt bike, made him sell his other one on his own. So he's been putting around the house, not putting. He's slamming. He's got 85.2 cycle. The thing is screaming. Chris, how was your week?
I'm doing good, brother. I'm here.
Yeah.
It's nice and cool in the basin. It's been hot here this week.
I know.
It has.
It has been freaking smoking.
Holler at Otter on Rumble.
Yeah, hey, for our lost boys over on Rumble, hello. One thing I do want to address real quick. So I put out a short talking about how I was going to basically do a podcast with the Secret Service, a former counter sniper on the Secret Service. And I did. We did that. We actually shot that entire video. I spent all last night we got done shooting that at probably around 6.
It was like 8 or so.
Okay. Oh, yeah, it was about 7:45 when he left. Long story short, I stayed up till 6 a.m. Editing that. And then he gave me a call, and there's been a bunch of new information come out, folks. We're going to reshoot that tomorrow.
Oh,
and
really?
I think, yeah, we are. We're going to reshoot that tomorrow. We're going to include the new information that has come out. I think it drastically changes kind of some of the things that we talked about. But more importantly, too, look, I'm not going to pretend that I'm some great interviewer. You know, I'm not Joe Rogan. I haven't been doing this for 15 years. And I'll be honest with you, I was not happy of how long it was and some of the things. So it'll also give me a second chance at that where we can make it a little bit more succinct. And
I want to say, too, it's really cool. I'm not saying names, but it's really cool having friends that have connections way deep into there that can come back and say, this isn't right, 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 that you've heard on TV. And then you actually get to hear the real story from them, which that was really neat. Like,
which most Americans
not even 24 hours afterwards.
Most Americans will never hear the real story.
No. And that just really cool. You bring me on and introducing me to people that have those connections, and it's really cool to hear that, because like Summer said, people are never going to hear this real story. Oh, they were on a sloped roof and it wasn't safe. It's total BS. And then they didn't have eyes on that. Well, it wasn't a certain division, or it wasn't a certain department, it was somebody else. It's just so
well, what's a little crazy,
a mush of crap that they just said, this regurgitated it out, and people are running with it.
What is a little crazy is that a lot of the things that people are criticizing aren't even right. There's a ton of things to criticize, but they're getting so much wrong. And here's the thing. Look, we have a country that's been at war for the last 20 years. So we got lots of snipers out there, whether you're military, law enforcement, and a whole bunch of a lot of different folks on the spectrum on there. I even saw like all guys that all they were PRS shooters, trying to give some sort of professional criticism breakdown. And like,
what was he, 150 yards away?
It's ridiculous.
Less than, I think.
The fact of the matter is just because you were a military sniper, just because you were a law enforcement sniper, and just even if you've been trained on counter sniper operations, folks, there's so different between, if you're a military sniper and then you could get out and you go work for a federal agency, everything is different. How you operate, how the team operates, the task organization, the capabilities, the ROE. Like, you can't just project. It's literally like a podiatrist, basically trying to criticize how a neurosurgeon did something in a surgery.
On a brain
It is very different.
Anyway,
With that being said, there's lots to criticize there, but you know, what we have is a guy that was a former counter sniper team member. He's done advances, he's done the planning portion, the execution of many times, and you don't even know, and I didn't, and I spent a lot of time with this guy. I've spent a lot of time with other guys that are on the counter sniper team with Secret Service, and just picking their brains, seeing how their task organization, how their mission set, how they operate is so vastly different from what I'm used to. And even all the time that I spent with them, the things that I learned just from talking to him was pretty profound. With that being said, you know, I think there's no, you know, spoiler alert, we had a massive failure, and it is one of the biggest black eyes on America that we could have somebody, a 20-year-old untrained individual, get a shot off on a former president. We have major problems. What we have is a Secret Service that isn't even real. It's not even real. You know, basically they have turned themselves into the equivalent. And I'm not saying it's necessarily the guys on the ground, although I do think there's some responsibility there. But long story short, hey, you're going to get that whole interview. I think it'll be very informative. I think you'll enjoy it. And even the bad one that I got there that I was working on all last night was still pretty good, but we can make it better. All right. With all
just want
that,
to point out real quick.
Yeah.
Chris has decided to identify as Derek today.
He did. He decided to change his name.
Derek.
Derek.
Derek's gonna love that. That's
It's
your
actually
impersonation.
Pronounced derelict.
Derek.
Hey guys, I'm Derek.
All right. So with all that said, we're about to introduce our very special guest. And this is a guy that I've been following. I've never met Alan, but I've been following for a long time. And I was actually telling him, you know, prior to this, one of the things that I know, you know, there's certain people that you find on social media, and I hope that I portray this as well. That if you have come across this on social media and then you end up meeting me in real life, you know, I'm the same guy. I want to be as genuine as possible, and not project something I'm not be different when you meet me. And that's what I've always felt about him. And come to find out, we were just talking prior to this, we were actually in the Q course. We arrived and left basically the same time. We were in the Bravo course. I'm shocked that we didn't rub shoulders in the 18 Bravo course, but who knows? There was a lot of stuff going on during that time. They were changing the pipeline at that time, so we had like months in between different phases of that. Anyways, without further ado, I'm going to bring on Alan, and we're going to introduce him, and I'm going to let him just kind of introduce himself to you guys, and we will go from there. Alan, welcome. Thanks again for coming on. We really appreciate it. And if you will, just kind of tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I was with the 20th Special Forces Group going in the National Guard. I started out there initially in Mississippi and went to the 3rd Group. Got recruited straight out of the Q course for the SIF in B23, and did 3 deployments with the SIF in 2007, 8, and 9. Got out and was with 19th Group here in Texas for a couple of years, and just decided to get out altogether.
Awesome. Yeah, if you will, Alan, tell everybody, just explain to everybody what SIF is, and you know, kind of your mission set, what you guys did, and how you're different from the rest of the companies within the different battalions of a group.
So the Commanders In-Extremis Force is designated. They have 1 SIF per group, and it's one company that specializes in direct action, hostage rescue, counterinsurgency, and counterterrorism. And we only deployed to Iraq. I only made all my deployments in Iraq, versus the rest of the 3rd Group was actually going to Afghanistan. And it was with the 5th Group SIF and 3rd Group SIF that stood up the ICTF and started working the commandos in Iraq right after the initial invasion. So our compound was actually separated from, not initially, but by the time I got there, was separated from the rest of the group, rest of the battalions that were there.
When you were where were you at in Iraq?
So the first year I got there a little bit late. That's actually I met my team.
Nice.
Because I signed out of the National Guard unit and rushed over back up to Bragg. I signed in a group, a couple of days later, signed into battalion. Within like just a few days after that, I was on a flight and I met my team downrange. So it was a whirlwind actually starting out. And the first year was in Baghdad, and we were working primarily Solder City. That's when it was still kind of popping off. And once that ended, got back and went to Sephardic, went back out in 2008. And we started out in Tikrit and Taji. And then there was a heavy rise in insurgency in Mosul. There was like a 73% rise in insurgency, I believe. And so we did like a mid-deployment deployment, so we literally picked up all our stuff from Taji and Tikrit and headed up to Mosul for the rest of the deployment that we had there. And then in 2009, that's when everything started changing, and the ROEs and the mission set started changing to more of an advisory role, but we were in Baghdad the rest of the time there.
Nice.
Got back from there and went to Sodic, and time was up. Decided to move back to Texas, and that's when I jumped in the National Guard unit there, and that was kind of short-lived too.
Yeah, no, we were talking about that. It's I think for a lot of active duty guys in special operations, I know it was for me. It was a hard, it was a very challenging for me to go from basically right off a deployment. I came off a deployment from Afghanistan, like 2.5
out processed.
Yeah,
and
literally 2.5 3 months later. I am here in West Virginia now working for diplomatic security, which obviously is a huge culture change without a doubt. And that was a big shift. And then I went on to I was like, oh, you know what, I'll try this guard thing. And so I went to B220 out of Maryland. It just never, it was just a different thing. I was like, I was not happy, but anyways, everything all worked out. I'm curious if you don't mind sharing, like, what was, and I'll do the same, obviously you had a very active and successful career. What was there any one thing that made you decide to get out?
I think it was more of accumulation of things. There was, in 2009, there was, like I said, that's when the new ROE started coming out, and we started moving to like an advisory role.
When the SOFA agreement hit. So we were actually in Iraq when the SOFA agreement hit. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
So we were doing missions in like 100 days. We had done like 180 hits, running hard. And then the SOFA agreement hit, and it came out to where like we were told, hey, look, before we go do a hit, we actually have to have a warrant. So we got to go before a judge. And my team sergeant was like, we're done. We're not doing this. And we still did some intel collection. We did a little this, we did a little that, but we were actually Camp Caldwell we were like 14 clicks from the Iranian border. I will think of the place in just a second.
Sharif, is that?
No, that was Afghanistan, Missouri Sharif. Anyways, and we were already constantly getting compromised and things like that. They had there was a lot of Iranians out there working and doing a really good job organizing. Their intelligence network was great. We were having to work hard to not constantly compromise. And once that hit, we're like, we're done with this. And I think we had like another 40 days in country where we did what we could, but my team started to make the determination, hey, this is, the juice ain't worth the squeeze, because everyone's going to know we're coming, and all we're doing is getting set up for ambush. So
we even had less than that though. So we would actually go to like the border, like where Solder is, and then we'd stop, and then they would continue on. The only time we'd actually go in, like we're behind them, if there was like some type of, I don't know, altercation where they, were taking fire or something, and they needed some, response from us. But unless there was like, unless they needed help with us, SSE. So other than that, we're literally just on the radio, you know, sitting in our trucks, just kind of waiting around.
Yeah. Yeah.
So from the tempo that we had the year before that, and especially the year before that, when I first got there, I mean, it was drastically different. And when you're kind of used to that pace, you know, it's just kind of like, okay, what are we doing now? You know,
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
No, you were 100%. I think we're probably going to end up, you know, ultimately what happened was I got back from that. Some things happened. And then, you know, a few months later, we ended up deploying to Afghanistan. And while we were in Afghanistan, things just got stupid. We were now dictated that we had to make sure that it was basically like Garrison. It was AR-670-1. We were going out with patches, or we weren't going out. We had to remove all the skulls and every sort of team, you know, logo or whatever off of our trucks. You know, that they were trying to turn us into diplomats. That's not our job. And then you went through the Q course with them. Do you know Charles Martland?
Sounds familiar.
Charles Martland, I went through the 18 Bravo course with him. Freaking stellar dude. One of the best soldiers I've ever met. So long story short, when we arrived in country, I was there at the B team, and I saw Charles Martland at the B team, and I knew he had just taken over the dive team as a temporary team sergeant. Or at least recently. And I was like, hey, man, why are you? I knew where his team was. And I was like, why are you here? And he was like, I don't want to talk about it. So long story short, Charles Martland was the guy that his FID force commander had kidnapped, tied up a 12-year-old boy and had raped him for like 4 days straight. And the mother of that kid came to the team house. So Charles and the team leader went to that location, confronted him, confirmed it, literally took that kid out of his hoosh that was literally handcuffed to a pole. And they roughed him up a little bit. Charles pushed him down. That commander ended up, and that's, I later confirmed that literally that's all he did. He threw him to the ground. Probably Charles is a big dude, probably with, it probably wasn't gentle. It was definitely less than the guy deserved. And anyways, so that guy went to a conventional army unit, filed a complaint. And the next thing you know, Charles was brought up on charges. They were talking about taking his tab. They pulled him and the team leader, and gave them both a letter of reprimand
for saving a 12-year-old boy.
They were trying to process them out of their armory. There was a big what's it called? Where everybody signs
Petition.
Petition. I think he ended up staying. I'm not sure that I would have if I was him. But between that and just the politics and the hand tying, I was like, you know what? I'm having a hard time finding a reason to stay and do this. And you know, and it was very stressful in our marriage. There was a lot of things going on personally. Anyways, so I was like, you know, it's the juice ain't worth squeezing more, and we need to go do something else. And while there's times I miss it, I look back and I know that was the right answer. You know, I was E7. I was actually on the E8 list. I was getting ready to have to go in def if I wanted that. And you know, between that and a bad experience in that last deployment, I was like, you know what, I'm kind of done with this. So, but it all worked out for the best.
So I actually did re-enlist when I was on my 09 deployment. The problem was that when I got back, and so when I re-enlisted, that was my I think it was like a 6-year one, and then it was going to go. But I managed to get that little hefty bonus. It was like 38 grand.
Yeah.
And I remember how at first it was like 60 or 70, and then it started kind of going down. So I caught it on the way down, like by 38 grand or something like that. And I was like, okay, that'll work. And I was actually in Sodic at the time, and I was like checking my account. I'm like, how long does this bonus take to get in? Because I already did my paperwork. I turned it all in. It was all done. And I go to the re-enlistment office, and I was like, hey, how long is the check? I mean, it's been like 3 months, 4 months, you know, and I was supposed to get it tax-free because I did it overseas,
right?
And finished it off. And the guy's like, oh, yeah, you're missing a signature. I was like, what do you mean I'm missing a signature? I completed it here. We all did it and it was done. He's like, no, you're missing it. Your commander needs to sign. I was like, you didn't take it to the guy that's up the street to get it signed. And I mean, that's literally all you had to do. Is like, well, you can still get your re-enlist and, you know, it's no problem, but you're not going to get the bonus. I was like, you know what?
Don't worry about the signature.
You got it, man. Just don't worry about it. You know, stay seated. Fucking twat.
No, we actually had I remember we had a couple guys when it was around 60 or so. They actually deployed them to the Philippines just for that on a J set, right? They attached them to somebody so they could get that overseas money without tax, get the bonus money tax free. And I know of at least two guys the exact same thing happened. They ended up getting back, but their enlistment went through, but somehow, and I don't remember the details, but they ended up screwing them out of the bonus.
Oh no!
And yeah, it happens, man. It happens a lot more than people realize. Well, let's talk about. So, you know, again, I know you have a very. I'll just categorize it as much as I can as far as a pro-Palestinian message. What I would like to ask you, do you have any affiliation with Palestine, or like your family from there? Like where did this come from? Because you're very passionate about it. And I think you're a voice worth listening to, and I'm curious where that came from.
So initially it came from actually just following the news and seeing what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, the trigger for all this, like getting involved in it, was when we all know conflicts go on. It's no problem, you know, and there's always two sides to that. But when you say it's unprovoked on one side, when you know this has been going on, and there was like 11-day air raids that have been happening literally just weeks before that, and they're not mentioning any of that, that's what provoked me to actually start digging in and doing research, reading on books, going into all the different media sources that I could find, and really kind of digging in. Because I mean, for the first few months, I actually didn't say anything, because I was like, I need to make sure I know what my stance is, you know, before I say anything.
Sure.
And the more I started doing research on this, the more I started kind of like things were actually just coming to the top, and that this was like so much, like there's so much bullshit, in my opinion, that was coming out.
Right. And
now, you know, especially when I was calling it out back then, like a few months later, and people are saying, no, you don't know, you don't know, you don't know. Now, actually, you know, 6-9 months later, things are actually coming out to where the things I was saying earlier were, you know, was right. And it's not about being right or wrong, as I'm more for a very much of an evidence type mentality.
Sure.
If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I mean, it's that simple. It doesn't affect my identity. When it does affect my identity is when I stop, you know, when I don't change because of my own personality issues, my ego. But I mean, as much as I might, you know, if you say, if I don't disagree with 100% of that, what you're saying, but you say the sky is blue, I'm like, I can't deny that. You know what I mean? I got to say, well, I don't like you, and I think that you're wrong about everything, but you're right about that. I have to. So as evidence presents itself, I will change my mind. Absolutely. It's nothing like, I'm not set in stone on anything, but everything that I've seen that led me up to that point was, to me, just atrocious.
What spurred? I mean, you're clearly deep into this. As a matter of fact, I think you actually went over there, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that is not a normal interest, right? I'm very curious as to like what made you so passionate about it to dig that deep, to end up going over there, all of those things.
I guess it's more of just a strong sense of empathy. I mean, all I could try to picture was like, what if this was happening to me? What would I do?
Sure.
You know, if I mean, I don't know how old you are, but I mean, when Red Dawn came out, it was like, that was, you know, an eye opener. Like, what if that actually happened? And that was like the first time you had kind of like a visual of that. You know what I mean? If a foreign country came in, invaded your country, and then start taking it over, what would you do? And I mean, 100%. I can't think of anyone that's in our profession that wouldn't. You know what I mean? And then I started reading that. I think some of the stories that I was reading were just like absolutely horrific. And I try to look at things without designating, as much as I can, whether, what nationality they are or whatever, what side they are, and just see it as, is this right or wrong?
Sure.
And if somebody comes in and they're like, you know what, we're going to take over this house, and you decide, you know what, I'm a peaceful person. I'm not gonna resist on this. Let me gather up my things, and then you leave the home that you've had for 3 generations. Then you lose your house. That's the best case scenario. But if someone comes in and starts taking over your home, and you say, no, I'm not going to give up my home, and you actually fight back, then you're labeled a terrorist, and you get slaughtered. You see what I mean? And they have Israel has the overwhelming amount of firepower. There's no doubt about that, and that can't be argued. And so when you look at, say again.
I said I definitely don't disagree with that.
Yeah, and so it's basically like, you're in West Virginia. I'm sure they got militias out there. And if you think about it in the same scenario, it's literally like a militia. They don't have, armored personnel carriers. They don't have, tanks or helicopters. You saw paragliders on the October 7th for all means. And let me just be clear on this, man. I don't support Hamas. I've been an avowed atheist since I was like 12 years old. I don't support any type of theocracies. I don't support any type of religion involved with politics. I think it's very dangerous. So any type of theocracy, I just don't support. And I don't support Hamas. And I do agree that even the UN has, put out that they had committed war crimes under international law. And I agree with that. They did. It was a horrible event. That being said, if you're going to maintain those same standards, you have to look at the other side as well. And this is the part that, once we kind of start getting into it, where I have troubles with other like Green Berets and guys like that, we'll have a discussion like we're having right now.
Sure.
But when you actually try to talk to people about this that are like so
emotionally tied to it.
Exactly. That's when it becomes difficult, and it usually becomes more of a fight. And I'm like, dude, I'm not going to get into this with you. If you want to talk, let's talk. But I'm all about civil discourse.
Yeah.
And like I said, if you present evidence to me where it shows me that I'm wrong, I got no problem saying, hey, man, I was wrong. And now I know this, and I'll change. Yeah. But, I just expect, the same thing to be reciprocated.
No, and I think that I think that's really important that, just like I told you, if nothing else, we may leave this, we may never agree on this. And quite frankly, just realistically, I don't think that we will. With that being said, I want you to know that I'm coming into this as earnest as possible. Same, just exactly what you said. If you can tell me that, if you can convince me that Israel is something other than what I think they are, and the situation is different than I think it is, I'm willing to take a look at that. And I do think that there is a complete lack of civil discourse, and we've all participated in it. I definitely have, I have written off. I have such a strong feeling about the intent of so many political parties in this country, right? I don't think either party really has our best interests at heart. But I do think that, and I'll just say it again, I don't know what your political affiliation is. And again,
no, I'm saying, I thought you were saying we weren't going to agree on things.
What's that?
Oh, hey, wait,
yeah.
while we're light,
so far you're agreeing.
while we're light, because you're
on the specific topic of Israel, and it's okay, because this is the thing. It's like we can be friends and disagree. Like my best friend Jason, he also went through the Q course with me. He's normally here, but he's
gay.
Oh my God, those two argue like they're freaking married.
If we disagree on everything, sometimes I disagree with him on things I actually agree with him in, just because if he thinks it's right, it's got to be wrong. That's just the reality of it.
No, I want to ask Alan, because you were rolling through it. I was trying to be a sponge. What did you say?
You're doing great.
Your religious affiliation was, because
about atheist.
Okay, that's what I thought it was.
Yeah.
But
Avowed.
Avowed. Sorry.
Yeah. No, thank you.
I think those words are synonymous. That's pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I think just like I told you before this, if nothing else, hopefully, we could set a good example of like, hey, you know what? I think you're a fucking moron, Alan, but we're friends. Like, we're cool. And it's okay. Like, and it's just like, it's just like in a team room. Like, you go in there and talk shit and disagree. I was actually very surprised at how many people in a group are, pretty liberal. They're pretty far out there. I saw less of that even in the regular army. But, again, at the end of the day, we're friends. And we learn to respect each other because
you have to respect each other.
No, you don't have to.
Well, I'm just
You don't
saying,
have to.
you have to have some level of relationship for you guys to do the jobs that you do together as a team.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Maybe respect was the wrong word, apparently, but
it is, because in a group of tight brothers, and this could be in the military, out of the military. I would say 90% of my group of brothers is out of the military. You degrade each other regularly, and that's how you know how deep the love.
That's actually how I show affection.
Absolutely,
it's 100%.
It's absolutely, because all the wives are like, Jesus, you said that. Like, yeah, I love them.
Well, what gets
I think, especially after like a few deployments, especially the people that I've known from the Q course, I've kept in contact with most of my team for over 16, 17 years now, and how that person is, what kind of person they are, and regardless how much you disagree with them, you guys, I'm almost guarantee you have the same relationship. Well, I'll punch him in the face, he'll punch me back. But if anyone says shit about him, or if anyone tries to, step up to him, I'll be the first one to put him down. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And it doesn't matter how much we disagree. It's just, this is someone that I will always defend. Regardless how much, but I'll tell him straight up, you're a fucking moron, dude. Shut the fuck up. But if someone else says that, it's different.
Yeah.
But we do disagree on a lot of things. And if it doesn't change that relationship, but I always try to ask, why do you say that though? You know what I mean? If you have feelings about it, it's one thing. I'll dismiss it easily. But if you actually have like something to back it up, other than, well, this guy said so. Well, show me something more than that. Show me some type of, and like I said, I'm an evidence type person.
Sure.
Right. You have to have, like, show me, where did you get your source? You know what I mean? At least have that. That's to me like the bare minimum. And, I got into it with one guy, and I was really trying to have a conversation with him, and a genuine one. And it literally started out with just, ad hominem attacks, just straight trying to attack my personality of it. And, the person that I am, just like, where are you getting your sources from? Like, what is your understanding of this? Have you spent time over there in any capacity? And just ignoring that question and ignoring the next question, ignoring that, and just kept going on. And like, okay, I know how this is going to turn out. So enjoy, have a good day. It's not worth my time.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So before we get into and I'm going to just shut up and let you go and talk to everybody on here a little bit. But there's a couple of things that just, again, I wanted to kind of see where you were coming from with a lot of different, just kind of where your head was at within this completely. Because I've read some posts here and there, and, I can sit there and think that I know where you're coming from. That's obviously not necessarily true. There's a few words that you use on a fairly regular basis that I want to make sure that I know what you mean by those, because I do think that these are thrown around pretty regularly. The first one, and I'm going to throw it up here. Well, I'll just ask you, when you say the term Zionist, what do you mean by that exactly?
So Zionism is actually a political ideological movement that started with Theodor Herzl back in the 1880s.
Yep.
And that has no reference to Judaism. As a matter of fact, he was an atheist himself. If you actually, and I mean, itself was a colonial project, and this wasn't anything that was hidden. This wasn't anything that was set aside. You just got to read it for yourself. I have, even as an atheist myself, I'll be the first one to defend everyone's right, especially just so no misunderstanding of this. I'm an American first and foremost. I consider myself a patriot. Even as an atheist, my highest authority is the U.S. Constitution. So now, just because I bring up issues that I feel these are things that we need to fix, doesn't mean that I hate my country. It means I want it to make it better. Sure. So when I speak about like people's religion, I'm assuming you're a Christian, and I will defend your right to be a Christian 100%. I will be shoulder to shoulder with you. I just don't want your religion to impose legislation on me. That's where I draw the line. And so if your religion allows you to do that or doesn't allow you to do that, cool, I got no problem with that. But if your religion doesn't allow me to do that, now we got a problem. And that's where I feel like everything should be kind of separated into that. And if you practice Judaism, if you're Muslim, if you're Hindu, if you're Buddhist, it doesn't matter. Everyone, especially here, as this nation was started as a religious refuge where people could actually practice their own religion without being harassed, be able to have the freedom of religion, bottom line.
Yeah, no, fair enough. So, because my problem, I guess not my problem, but I guess, there's a couple words that I think get thrown around a lot. And I don't think I think they mean very different things to many different people, right? And Zionism, I think, is one of those. Basically, it was originally in a movement. I think most people, I don't know if you quite defined it exactly, but you defined it as a movement. But basically, I think for most people, what Zionism actually is to me and means to most people is the idea that Israel has a right to their own
I'm sorry,
nation.
man. It's really breaking up right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said, Zionism basically means to me that Israel has a right to their own nation. And that's what that means to me. And I think that's what that means to most people. Now, regardless of where it started out, regardless of the intent behind it, I think that's generally what it means to most people. And when they use that phrase, I do hear people on the other side, on your side of the argument, often refer to Zionism, and I think it has a different connotation. So, regardless of what it started out as, what is Zion? When you say he's a Zionist or they're a Zionist, what does that mean to you?
A Zionist is, like I said, it's more of a colonial. Like, for example, you were saying, just to be clear on that, it was getting staticky. You're saying that Zionism has
Zionism to me, and
Yeah.
I think most people means that Israel has a right to exist and that Israel
Okay.
has a right to, their own country.
Okay. I don't feel that any apartheid state has a right to exist. Now, if it's one for itself, by all means, if it's a even democratically, fair country where there is no discrimination amongst them, I think it's no problem with that. I'm not one of those that thinks that no country has the right to exist. I just believe that if it's an apartheid state, it doesn't have the right to exist. It needs to be something that's even across the board, where there is no discrimination. There is no separation between just because it's you have certain ethnicity or a certain religious background. I'm not for the whole nationalism thing.
Okay.
So just to reiterate, because I'm what when you say someone is a Zionist, what are you referring to? What are you thinking that they are believing or thinking?
Settler colonialism.
Okay.
So, and this is one of the biggest problems that people fail to address is the illegal settlements and the settlers that are in that have come down. I mean, how it all started and is currently going on. For example, this is one of the reasons I went to the West Bank myself. I actually got into a 2-hour conversation with an IDF soldier. It was SF, and he saw the video I made, the City Hall speech that I gave, which I had no idea was actually going to go public. I just went there to vent, and we discussed things. And one of the things that I left with that, he was like, "You need to go see for yourself. You need to go see for yourself." Now, he did put a caveat on there. Let me show you around. I need to show you, which kind of like perked my ears up. Like, why would you need to show me? So I took him up on that. And that's why I wanted to go I spent there was 2 things that happened. So there's a NGO that's called, that provides security for surgeons going into different war zones. A buddy of mine from 10th Group was actually with him. He was in the Ukraine, and he sent me the contact for that. They had team leaders that were going into Gaza, so I volunteered for that, and I was staging out of the West Bank for it. Problem is that I never got the call, so I never got to go to Gaza itself. That's where I was trying to go. And So I spent my time in the West Bank, and that is something that I got to see firsthand. So seeing, the settlers, or excuse me, the settler violence that was increasing drastically, the settlements that already been established, and how those are run with the protection of the IDF. I mean, I got to see that firsthand. So whether it was on propaganda on one side or the other, I just want to be on the side that's true, the truth of it, the side that's right, regardless of my personal feelings on that. And I'll be honest with you, when I talked to him about this, I was telling him, my stance on it, and he brought up some points that I was like, maybe even like almost second guess what I was saying. And so before I even like switched out, I took down all of my social media, all of it entirely. And so like, let me go experience this, because I didn't want it to be like a photo op. I didn't want people to kind of like cheering on. I wasn't doing it for, for myself. Excuse me, I was just doing it for myself so I could actually see what was going on firsthand.
Right.
And I actually encourage people to actually do that. I think that, I mean, y'all as Christians would definitely enjoy Bethlehem,
Sure.
hands down. Just as a, historical religious, site, Jerusalem as well. And you also get to see how the IDF treats Christians. But don't take my word for it. I would actually suggest you go for yourself to actually see how Christian persecution actually is. And this was talking to, I spoke to priests. There was Catholic, there was Lutheran, there was Greek Orthodox. I spoke to several Christians that were actually there about all of that. And again, because I'm pro-Palestinian, people don't want to believe what I'm saying. And I said, it's totally fine. I totally get it. Go experience it. And then come back, tell me I'm wrong. But until you actually do go, I mean, there's this whole void of information that you're just getting it from one side. But there's actually like a lot of videos out there that show otherwise as well. But again, if you feel that strongly about it, I invite you to go, and you can see this, what's going on, the harassment that happens to Christians directly from Israeli side. But don't take my word for it. Go experience it.
Sure.
I think too, though, you say go experience it, but there's so many people in this world, in the United States, Christians that they do not have the ability to go. They don't have the funds. They don't have, for numerous reasons, they can't go. And so we're relegated to gathering what information we can,
Understood.
So while we would all love to go experience it for ourselves or see for ourselves or be able to collect that information ourselves, sometimes it's just not possible.
If I gave you context for those people, would you take me up on that?
You
could speak directly. No, you could. No. You could speak directly to the. I met the priests that were out there. I still got contacts with them.
Yeah.
You can talk to them directly. You know what I mean? And so that way you actually don't. It's not coming directly from me, but
right.
You can actually. And that's the strange part is there is a group of people that I've run into when I'm trying to discuss this that literally don't want to know.
Right.
I think that would kind of like make them change their stance. And I think when your ideology becomes attached to your identity, I think that becomes very difficult for you to change your mind and actually accept new evidence.
Sure.
And so I'm not saying that's y'all. I'm saying that I've experienced that with other people.
Right.
But, and I gather these things because of that specifically. And like I said, I have it's not a religious thing whatsoever. And you can actually get to see that. And I would highly suggest if you do go, don't go under, an Israeli tour, because you're going to get one side of it. Go as a tourist, as yourself, and experience it all. That's exactly what I did. And so no one knew what I was there for. No one knew why I was, or what side I was on or anything. I literally just went there to see what was going on firsthand. And these are the experiences that I bring back. Whether you agree with them or not, I don't know what to tell you, but these are the experiences that I had. I took video of a lot of the things that was happening. I took pictures as much as I could. I'm still in contact with a lot of the people that are out there. I think one of the big things that one of the big myths that's going around though is like, oh, this is a religious thing and it's been going on for thousands of years, which is absolutely untrue. You
No,
experience that when you
I
actually go to
don't think,
Bethlehem.
yeah,
Sorry?
I don't think it. No, I don't think it's a religious thing. I think it's a fight over territory. I think it's really
Power.
as simple as that.
We
And
agree.
yeah, like I don't think it has really anything to do with religion. I think that ultimately, my mindset on this is that it was a bad situation, and I don't know. Well, you know what? I'll leave it at that.
Well, I just
go ahead.
this comes from a very uneducated and ignorant standpoint, which is why I'm asking probably what you two may view as a very dumb question, but I'm going to ask it. You had referred to it as an apartheid state or country earlier, which would be, by definition, apartheid is the implementation and maintenance of a system of legalized racial segregation. Would that not have? But you just said it's a fight over
Racial
territory.
or ethnic.
Right. But
Yes.
but now you guys are agreeing that it's just about territory. Would apartheid not indicate that it's about something other than
But
just
it could be
territory?
both things at once. I think so.
Yes.
Like I said, I'm asking from a very uneducated standpoint and just going based off of what pieces of information I'm pulling from the conversation. So, would that not indicate that it's about more than territory, though?
No.
Okay.
I think
Why?
I think they are different people, right? And it just so happens that these two different people. It's like if suddenly, we got into this fight with Mexico over Texas, right? And we suddenly started treating Mexicans as second-class citizens that were within our
Because
border.
they have the territory we want.
Or because we have this disagreement over a territory, right? My problem with that argument is that I do think that if the shoe was on the other foot, I think the same thing would be happening to Israelis. And again, this isn't about Jewish or Muslim necessarily. I mean, there's plenty of Israelis that are Muslim. There's plenty of Israelis that are not Jewish. But they agree with the Jewish stance and the things that they're doing, to the Palestinians. And I think there's arguments on both sides of that. But with that being said,
Yeah, what's your
Alan,
your
I'll
answer
turn
to
it over
that?
to you.
So yes, there is 20% of the Israeli population is actually Arab Israeli. You're absolutely right. Now you have to also keep in mind from the occupied territories of the West Bank and Gaza, if you are in those situations, what would you do to do better for your family? You know what I mean? So a lot of people make that step to try to make that, but that doesn't change that there are discriminatory laws against those same citizens. For example, the marriage law. Palestinians that are 100% Israeli citizens cannot marry someone from the West Bank or Gaza. They cannot marry them. But same rule doesn't go for Israelis. You see what I mean? There's literally like a list of like a whole bunch of them that are based off of, and you can actually read off the Israeli human rights a report that Israel, like Greater Israel, is actually an apartheid state from an Israeli human rights organization called B'Tselem. Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, they wrote a 400-page document on that. That literally goes in very detail of everything that's going on and how they're actually an apartheid state. The occupied territories, there really is no argument on that. I mean, when I was in Al Khalil or Hebron and trying to make it back to Jordan, just to the border, it's a 45-minute, maybe an hour drive, but Palestinians are not allowed to use those highways. So we had to go around and take all the different the routes through the town. It took us 3 hours.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's that is not an argument, but there's actually plenty of them. And my always source to try to go to is always trying to find an Israeli source, because if not, people will say, well, you're going to a source that's already biased. Okay, Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch is not biased, but I'll go with the Israeli B'Tselem, and get my information from there, which actually goes more into detail than the other two because they're actually based out of Israel.
Well,
So-
let me kind of pause because we're already
Sure.
kind of getting into the weeds. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let you loose, but I guess what I would ask you to do is for us and the viewers, before we kind of get into, you know, the granular details of some of the things that you see wrong going on there, give everybody kind of an overview. I mean, if you want to start at the beginning of, you know, 1947, where, you know, Israel came into existence, what happened, you know, kind of give the macro view
Yes,
of what
I
is going
need
on
that.
there, and then we can kind of dive into. And
Okay.
here's the thing, Alan,
I'll do my best.
I don't expect, and I don't think anybody on here should expect. I'm definitely not an Israeli-Palestinian expert. I know you're very passionate about that. You're deep into this, but doesn't mean that you can just, you know, recite everything off the cuff. And just because you can't doesn't mean that you're not correct, right? It doesn't take away any sort of you know, relevance. So anyways, I do your best. Kind of, I want to hear your view of that world at the 30,000 foot level.
Okay. So let's see. It started in 1917 at the end of World War I. So during World War I, the Allies versus the Axis the Allies were actually losing. You know, France and England and Britain, excuse me, were losing on that front. The trench warfare wasn't going their way. They were losing thousands of troops just to gain 10 feet of territory. So they actually started enlisting the help of the Arab tribes in order to defeat the Ottoman Empire. They felt if the Ottoman Empire would fall, then everything else would fall along with them. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, and that would all fall down, which they were absolutely right. It was actually, I think it was October 27th is when October 27th, 1917, I believe, is when the Ottoman Empire actually
Officially fell.
Officially fell, and they actually said, okay, you know, we give up. And then Armistice Day was November 11th, you know, 1917. So but they did that they did that just because they were able to get the help of all the Arab tribes to actually defeat them. And they would have never been able to defeat them without them.
Right.
Now, because of that, they actually promised them their own statehood, their own countries, they promised it all, but at the same time, they started promising the same things to the French and the Soviet. They already cut the Soviets out later on. And then this is where the Picot-Sykes Agreement comes in, where they started drawing lines and cutting out different territories of the Arab tribes. Hence comes in the British Mandate. So the British Mandate, I believe, 1920 to 1948, before Israel gained its independence from them, was the British occupation in Palestine. So they went from, hey, you guys promised us our own state, to, hey, we're going to occupy you guys. And then everything started developing for World War II. Adolf Hitler started getting into power in 1932 or 1933, I believe. Sorry, man, I've been hitting the head a lot. So a lot of these dates, you know, I apologize if I don't get them right on. But it was actually when he started kind of getting the rise into power. That is when a lot of this started kind of like, you started seeing a lot more. Now, there was migrations, I believe, in 1886 and 1914 going into Palestine from the Zionists. But here's the strange part.
Hold on, when you say from the Zionists right there, I mean, you're referencing Jews, right?
No, I'm referencing Zionists, not specifically Jews, but the Zionist movement.
Okay. Jews that want their own state at the time.
I don't know if we have enough time to kind of jump into all of that, but yes, we'll go with that. Jewish Zionists.
Okay. Yeah.
So a lot of people, there's a lot of talk, and I'll get into this, about the Grand Mufti that met with Adolf Hitler. But one of the things that has to be, and before anyone jumps on me about being anti-Semitic or anything else, I'm getting my information from the Jewish Virtual Library on this. about the 1933 Habar Agreement that was actually signed by Theodor Herzl and Adolf Hitler. That started the migration between 1933 to 1939 of approximately 50 to 60,000 Jews. That is argued between 30 to 60.
Sure.
So if you want to take the medium of it, that's up to you. But literally a lot of this, like the history stuff, I always try to go back to and use the Jewish Virtual Library and to try to make sure, like, okay, it's authenticated, at least somewhat verified. Now the terms and the sides of it, the bias, I just try to make sure the events themselves actually happen, because when I was like, and I actually went there, and it was basically to provide like a safety, because the Jews were getting pushed around all over Europe, and there is no doubt about that. They were mistreated. They were expelled from their homes all over the place, all over in Europe. Which brings the fact, why are the Palestinians paying for it? But I'll get back to that.
Sure.
So fast forward into the 40s, where the Holocaust. So the Grand Mufti actually did meet with Adolf Hitler on November 18th, 1942. But it's especially now, it's really important, and this is where I try to challenge people. Read the transcript. It's available online. The whole conversation that Adolf Hitler had with the Grand Mufti that came from Palestine to discuss the immigration problem, not to discuss, as Netanyahu put it, and he freaking lied. And this is what he said is what made me want to read the transcript, was saying is like they proposed the solution. They proposed the final solution. It was the Grand Mufti that proposed the final solution to Adolf Hitler, and like, oh, okay, we'll do that. It's entirely false.
One thing real quick, Alan, I don't mean to interrupt you, but
Sure.
If you would like, and I don't want to put a bunch of homework on you, but if you don't mind, if you have some of these reference materials and things like that, if you'll email this to me, I'll put it down in the description of this. And I just want people to have a place to reference this information. And again, these are things that I want to look through. I want to take a look at this. And we'll probably have another discussion of it in a few months or something like that. But I want people to have access to this and have a consolidated point of access to this. So anyways, go ahead, buddy. Sorry.
So I like a lot of these, especially after like October 7th, I kept a lot of them. So I still have a lot of those. The Jewish Virtual Library is actually really easy to use. It's a great resource, actually. Now, there is a lot of bias. You got to kind of, so I usually take the events and then I go around to the different places to kind of see what's happening. Sorry. November 18th, 1942, I believe. But the problem is that, with that whole story is that they already started building those concentration camps in the ovens that they were thinking about doing the final solution for the Jews in Poland in June. So their meeting took over in November, so that the timeline doesn't even match up. Now, there is always resistance within that area. And yes, there were Arabs attacking the Jews on there because of the heavy migration problem that was happening. There was a lot of people coming in, but even keep in mind, after World War II, there was a huge migration because no country wanted them. England didn't want them. France didn't want them. The US didn't want them. They were literally getting pushed around from place to place, and the Palestinians welcomed them in. I actually spoke to a 83-year-old Palestinian man that actually grew up into the Nakba of 1948, and was razor sharp with his memory. Actually, remembered specific dates of events that happened, which was phenomenal. I'm actually gonna try to interview him in a couple of weeks, so I'll send you the link for that.
Yeah, no,
but
sure.
Phenomenal man. And so here's a riddle me this question. I'm gonna again, if I go into all the details of all the events, and it's gonna take a while, but as a military.
No, I was just saying, I don't know that you need to. I just kind of want to see the big picture without because 90% of the Americans, they don't care. They want to kind of get a snapshot of what is taking place over there from a perspective they haven't seen before. That's really what it comes down to.
Do you know what the first terrorist attack was in the Middle East?
I believe that was actually conducted by Israel themselves.
Yep. Bingo. July
Yep.
22nd, 1946 was the King David Hotel,
Yep.
where the Stern gang, that was part of the Hargana, bombed the south wing of that, which most of the people that died in that was actually hotel staff. There were some British people in there. There were some Palestinians people in there. But that was actually the first terrorist attack. They went in there dressed up as Arabs and bombed the place. An interesting fact, the leader of the Stern gang ended up being Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. Now the Lehi, the Stern gang, the Hargan, all those terrorist organizations, and this is where it kind of differs. If you go to Jewish virtual library, there would say Israeli freedom fighters.
Sure.
But if you talk to the Brits, they literally have terrorists on there. The U.S. was calling terrorist attacks. The Brits were, and again, it's you got to be able to differentiate the two. So that's pretty much how everything started. The Great Nakba, the 750,000 Palestinians were expelled, and weren't allowed to come back. So this continued on for a really long time. Now, you heard about Oscar Schindler, right? The German industrialist, the Schindler's List.
Schindler's List. Yep.
Phenomenal man. If you actually like read about him outside of the movie, this was an incredible individual. He deserves all the credit. There's a memorial of him in Israel. Phenomenal human being. Definitely deserved his own movie. You ever heard of Falca Bernadette?
I have not.
You never will. Not in the sense where he's actually publicized and revered. So Falca Bernadette was a Swedish diplomat and soldier, and he was actually responsible for saving 30,000 people from concentration camps, a third of them being Jews. And a remarkable human being. He was also the first mediator that was part of the UN that was assigned for the Resolution 181, according to the UN, of the partition of between Israel, the Israelis, the Jewish, and the Arabs. He was trying to get everyone to agree on things, and again, the Arabs are like, why are like these people are coming from Europe and they're taking our land? Now, there have always been Jews in the Middle East. Okay, sure. There's no debate on that, and I hate hearing when people say there was never Jews there, which is bullshit. There were Jews. There were just a very small amount. Now, to say that they had to have the overwhelming majority for it to have a Jewish state, hence why they expelled 750,000 during the Nakba in 1948. The Nakba was actually brutal. I'm talking about rape, pillage. There's a great documentary called Tantura that actually was done by an Israeli that actually goes into it, and he interviews people that were actually in the Israeli battalions that were, and this specifically goes into Tantura village, but interviews the people that were actually there, audio, archives, and so forth. So phenomenal documentary if you get a chance. Really gives you a feeling of an understanding how the Nakba actually went from the perspective of the Israeli soldiers that were there.
Sure.
So Falca Bernadette was the mediator assigned by the UN. He was actually, even according to historians nowadays, the closest that anyone had ever gotten to almost achieving Middle East peace by giving literally like a half and half, like negotiating with the Arabs and negotiating with the Jews to actually have their own state and a two-state solution. Jerusalem was going to be under international law and free for everybody. And then each one of them was going to have, I think it was like a 56 to 54% split. And then he was assassinated. So before any of this happened, he was actually assassinated by Jewish Zionists, the Stern gang. And again, the leader of that was Yitzhak Rabin, who ended up later being the prime minister. So if you have an appreciation for a man that actually saved literally hundreds, if not thousands, of Jews from the concentration camp, you should have enough respect to not assassinate the man when he's trying to mediate land between that. But again, it was a Jewish Zionist extremist group, and this is why I'd like to differentiate between Judaism and Zionism, is because they were interested in the land versus Jews are interested in peace and actually getting along with everybody.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, there's definitely, there's definitely Jews that are obviously very outspoken about what's going on in Israel and Palestine, and they're not a monolithic people. There's a group of people that feel like, going back to what you said earlier, there's definitely, the reality is that Jews have been abused by many countries, and whether you want to make an argument that
they have
brought upon them or whatever you want to say, at the end of the day, that comes from a lot of bigotry going back from biblical times, right? Like, we have a Christian almost entire globe that feels like these are the people that killed Jesus, which is really the most ridiculous argument ever made, because again, this was Jesus fulfilling prophecy that we came down here to do. It had nothing to do with the Jews. It's going to happen whether Jews exist or not. Anyways, so it's just it's so silly. With that being said, I absolutely agree that there were, you can call them atrocities, you can call them whatever you want. There were people fighting for land. And I think this is something that's happened many times in the Middle East. It's happened here in the United States. It's happened everywhere, right? There's always been these ebb and flow of displacement and, some degree of barbarity to make that happen. And, the world is a different place than it was 80 years ago. Even then, like, we were less kinder and gentler than we are now. And I'm not saying that to justify any of that. I'm saying I think that is a people that felt like that's what they needed to do.
But why the Palestinians is always the question I bring up. What did they do to the Jews?
I have a very uneducated kind of question, and I think it also kind of ties into a question Jeff Hahn asked. I mean, you had referenced the Jews were being pushed out of Europe, so they were coming to try to take the Palestinians' land. Is that?
No, they were being pushed around Europe. So, right. The Ashkenazi Jews and so forth, they were pushed in, from one place. If they were in a village, they would get pushed out to another village. You see what I mean?
Right. But were there not Jews there way before?
Well,
yes.
So that is the ultimate argument, was like, hey, this was the original Israeli state.
Right.
Now, I know that there's going to be arguments about that whether King David was there, or, there was Israel actually ever existed as the Bible illustrates. That's fine.
I guess in my mind, it's the Jews coming back to their original place. And that's like I have said all along, I'm very uneducated about this, but and I think that's probably what most people in America believe.
Well, and real quick, before we go any further, hey folks, over everybody in the comments, look, we have these live podcasts because we want to hear from you. We want you to participate. With that being said, I want to frame this up a little bit. I meant to do this at the beginning, but I suck as a host. Look, if you want to comment or whatever else, make sure you're respectful, and then don't just say you're wrong. Throw something up there that's substantive, a link, a argument that we can address, a question, a comment, a debate topic, whatever it is. So keep it civil over there. We're all friends here. And if you disagree with anything that I say or anything that Alan says, don't just
say you're lying and you're wrong. Let's put something behind it.
Yeah. All right. Sorry, Alan. Get after it, buddy.
And again, there is no argument, and I think this is the other part of it that a lot of people don't have an understanding of, is that the Jews, the Muslims, and Christians actually got along. There's always conflict. There's conflict within the United States with all of people, but there's not war, right? So the Jews and the Muslims and the Christians would get along. They got along under the Ottoman Empire. There was, there wasn't like a slaughter of them, it was they were generally peaceful, environment for everyone, and they didn't have a problem with that. It was an overwhelming surge of people coming from Europe into that area, and that changed the entire demographic of things. I think one of the most harrowing stories that I heard was the gentleman that I met, that's Palestinian, remembers like his mother and a Jewish mother, they were cooking together, right? And they were having this great time, and they remember like, everything going well. And I think they said this, I think they were living together for like almost a year, in the same household. And they came back one day and the door's locked, and they're like, nope, this is ours. And shortly after, it was kind of like everyone's coming in there and starting pushing them out, like, no, you have to get out of town now. And so they started the migration out. Regardless of how you think of, the area, and they have no problem with Jews. They don't. If you don't believe me, don't take my word for it. Go to West Bank yourself. And this is something else that has to be kind of recognized, is that, and again, there's a lot of things in between that. The bottom line is that you had a large migration of people coming into, and the Zionists actually didn't care. Theodor Herzl just wanted to make sure that he had a place for the Jews to call their own. He sent expeditionary scouts to Kenya, right? And they actually had like that was a very close possibility for that. But don't take my word for it. That was Theodor Herzl that said that. That was looking for a safe haven for the Jews. Didn't really matter where it was. So the location was almost irrelevant. Now, there is a religious attachment to that. And again, no one cared at the time, even the time that I went, no one cares, if you're atheist. No one cares if you're Christian. No one cares if you're Muslim or if you're Jewish. But also keep in mind, the only Jews that I saw in the West Bank, in the occupied West Bank, and again, I didn't go to Gaza, and I've never been to Gaza before, so I can't attest to like how things were there. But in the West Bank, there were Christians everywhere, and there were Christian families living in Hebron until 2011. But they felt that the situation was just getting worse and worse and worse. So it wasn't from the Muslims pushing them out. It was, again, from the constant checkpoints, everything getting more difficult to get around. And they'll literally will shut the city down. They will cause traffic jams in the middle of the day for no reason. There's constant raids. There's settler violence. These are things that a lot of people don't have an understanding, is that ethnic cleansing doesn't have to be just killing and burning people's houses. It's literally like the dehumanization. It's the harassment. It's people getting pushed, by any means possible to leave. If they leave on their own, it makes it a lot easier. So the time that I was like,
Alan, real quick, can I challenge you on that a little bit?
Please.
You said ethnic cleansing doesn't have to be just killing them or the three words that I wanted to make sure that when those were spoken, we were talking about the same thing, was apartheid, genocide, and Zionism. I'll just say, I think ethnic cleansing has to only mean that. Like, I understand
Has
what
to
you're
only
saying.
mean what?
That
Killing.
Yeah.
If we're ethnic cleansing someone, if we're committing genocide, like, that can only be literal. Now,
Gotcha.
with what you're saying, I agree with what you're saying is horrendous. It's wrong if that is indeed the case. And I don't dispute that it is. But I do think that when we use like these very insightful words, whether we're talking about genocide or ethnic cleansing, especially, which get thrown around a lot, and it describes, people use those to describe many different things. But I do think that does, whether it's intentional or not, it shuts down the ability to listen and to have discourse when you're talking about something that really isn't ethnic cleansing. And I don't doubt that you will make the argument that, hey, this is what they're actually doing. That's fine. But at the same time, we can't say, hey, harassment and this antagonistic approach to governance is is indeed ethnic cleansing. So
Or
I would
genocide.
just, you know, I think those words mean something, and I think that we should, if we want people to listen to us and have a conversation on that, those words are definitely going to shut some people down if we're not
Okay.
describing exactly what. So that's all I'm saying.
So, and you could agree with me or not. And if you do disagree, please tell me where I'm wrong on this.
Yeah.
But the way I define ethnic cleansing is the systematic removal of of ethnic, racial, religious type of group of people in a specific area, with the intent of making, you know, the social or the society itself ethnically homogenous. So, like
a
for example,
social engineering,
say again.
Like a social engineering, like we're trying through force to social engineer this place to be one people.
Yes.
Okay. No, I don't. I'll buy that. So, like, yeah, yeah, I'll buy that.
Now, there's different manners of doing that, right?
Sure.
And again, the intent is to remove these people out. So, and again, the most common thing we see, especially like in Bosnia and Herzegovina with, what was his name? One that guy went to The Hague, Slobodan Milosevic.
Yeah.
He was remember that was like that was the first time that, you know, I mean, I was still in high school when I heard that term, and I was like, holy shit, you know, but the brutality that he had brought, you know, almost changed the definition of it, because his was literally going village to village, slaughtering, you know, each individual, and slaughtering the people in each individual village.
Yeah.
But again, whether it's through fear, that was also part of that during the Bosnia, Serbia, at the cleansing of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that plays a huge role, because if you hear about the things that are happening to the village across, what are you going to do? You're not going to, you know, risk your family. You're going to, like, you know what? We don't stand a chance. Let's pack up and leave. That is still cleansing the area of that specific type of people.
Right.
So
Yeah,
become.
no, I don't disagree with that at all. I like, and again, that's hey, you know, explain what you mean, but
Sure.
when you use this term. But so that's a great explanation.
Sorry. No. I've been talking my ass off. Please, if you got any questions, you know, I can be more specific, but I just feel I'm kind of drifting everywhere now because my thoughts are.
No, and I keep interrupting you, and it doesn't help.
No.
I'm the exact same way. So I guess let's take a look at modern day Israel and Palestine outside of October 7th, you know, prior to October 7th. Let's talk about, you know, how you see that the dynamic between these people, why it's wrong, what Israel is doing to Palestinians that, you know, most Americans probably don't understand, don't know, and you know what. Yeah, let's just kind of a overview of the modern situation with going to Israel, which I would assume that you would be saying is contributed to October 7th, and everything that goes on in between there.
Okay, before we start,
Yep.
for the people that are watching that are stupid, me included, give a little nutshell. You don't have to go macro, but micro, prior to October 7th, into October 7th, then portray after that, because not everybody's educated on that, me included.
Yeah, I think that's what he basically
So
said.
I'm saying I want to know what led up to that.
That's literally
That's what he just
I
asked.
just said.
I didn't say, you didn't say let up.
I know
you
you're from
said,
West Virginia.
you said October 7th.
No, I
No,
said
he said
I
like
said
before October
before
7th.
I
this
said
is
not
before then.
including October 7th.
Okay, then I
Before.
apologize.
That's
Alan,
all right.
I got a question for you too later. This is
Sure.
way off topic, but I got a question for you later, because you're an atheist with the brain, and I want to rattle it a little bit. But
Okay.
good.
Outstanding. I love theological debates, by the way. Absolutely love them.
Hell yeah.
That's another podcast altogether.
No. It'll be quick. But no, I
All
want
right.
to explain it to us dumb folk, Alan.
All right, Alan. Back to the
Before.
geopolitical situation, Israel, Palestine, and the modern times.
So I think the best way to understand October 7th is you have to understand what happened, you know, October 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd, 1st. Between January 1st, 2023 and October 1st, 2023, there was actually 241 Palestinians that were killed by Israeli Defense Forces. Either that or settlers that always backed up in IDF by IDF forces, excuse me.
Sure.
In 2022, there was 273, I believe. And 2021, there was 357. 2020, 219, and the list goes on and on and on. And again,
these are additional settlements every single year. Is that what you're saying?
No, he's saying these are people killed by
These are,
IDF.
okay.
people killed by IDF, and the majority are coming from that. You'd have settlers that come in that are backed by the IDF,
Right.
and they come in to expel them from their home. If there is no fight, then again, they just become refugees. If there is a fight, they become terrorists, and they usually get killed, because they're again, you're fighting a military force that's very well funded.
Yeah.
Right. So there is no chance, and again, it's a resistance group that goes, back years and years and years and years. And I think that's something that has to be acknowledged, is that there is. I don't approve of. We can both agree on this, that civilians, innocent civilians, should not be targeted, should not be, are not acceptable to be killed. Right. We do have, not just morality as human beings, but we do have the rules of engagement that we have to follow. Now, when you have the settlers, they're not just militia, right? Because militia would be civilians that are actually kind of, they're taking that role on their own. But when you have the Israeli government that's actually supplying the weapons to the settlers, it changes the entire dynamic of it, right? So you have these settlers that are going in, that are establishing these illegal settlements. And again, these illegal settlements condemned by the entire world and the UN for, decades. Excuse me. So you have to understand these things that are happening before that caused that. And this includes like the arrests. There's before October 7th, there was over 5,000 Palestinians that were being imprisoned. And these are detention centers, and they don't need to have like any reason. They don't need to have that. They can keep you in there, find a reason, and then maybe release you later on. Oh yeah, now you can go now. A few months later, you have men, women, and children. And yes, I mean children, and I'm not talking about 17-year-olds. I'm talking about 12 to 13-year-olds. And one of these things, you said you work for the State Department?
Yeah.
Josh Paul, you ever heard of him?
No.
So he's a former State Department official that was part of the human rights vetting process for arms going into Israel. And there was a report that came from an organization called Defense of Children International of Palestine about a 13-year-old boy that was raped in one of the Israeli detention centers. And this was in Masabiyah in Jerusalem. The allegations were examined, and they believed that they were credible. So they handed over to the Israeli government for additional investigation, see what's going on.
Now, are we saying those allegations were that Israelis raped them, the guards?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Gotcha. So the very next day, what had happened is that the IDF raided the DCIP to all their offices, removed all their computers, and then declared them to be a terrorist entity. So these are the things that, again, a lot of people aren't seeing. What's right is right. What's wrong is wrong. If this is where I stand on that, what Hamas did, taking hostages, killing innocent civilians, was wrong.
Raping and torturing women and children.
We'll get into that too. Absolutely. Anything like that is you're absolutely right. The problem is that as atrocious as it happened, there's a lot of things that were made up and a lot of things that are debunked and that are still coming across as this is fact. But this is how they treat these things. Now you have like, do you remember the whole 40 beheaded babies?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. That's been debunked, and you still have people parroting the whole baby in the oven, the whole So the Israeli Times, as well as the Israeli Social Security Administration, came out with a list of how many people were actually killed on October 12th, forensics and so forth. So the issue with that is that you had 2 infants that were killed, too many in my opinion, and it's horrible, but you had 2. So how did we have 40 beheaded babies? But yet still being parroted through the media and so forth. And because the reason for this is to dehumanize the Palestinians, because that's how atrocious these people are. That's how bad they are. So it justifies the genocide that's actually happening, because they feel like, oh, these are bad people. And again, not saying that sexual violence didn't happen, but why wouldn't we have like a third-party investigation actually investigate on that to actually see what's going on? Why won't the Israelis actually allow that to happen? They won't allow these third-party investigation party to come in and actually do forensic work on them. Where the majority of the information that was coming was from a nonprofit organization called Zaka. You ever heard of them?
I have, yes.
So the founder of that actually committed suicide a few years back after allegations of him being a serial rapist. So these guys, they're volunteers. They go in, they go into the different the areas, and usually natural disasters, and they get the bodies ready for a Jewish funeral. They're not forensic experts. They traditionally, like, overwhelmingly contaminate the scene, the crime scene that's happening. They don't know what they're doing. They're literally just volunteers in a group, and they have already had, I think it was June 22nd, there was one of the volunteers that came up with one of the rapes stories, and his literal words, let me paraphrase instead of saying quote, because again, I've been hitting the head a lot. I couldn't think of any other situation that could have happened. In the end, it turned out to be different. So, but he did initially put that. But the thing is that got broadcasted so much, about the systematic rape. The documentary that came out from what's her name, Cherie Mendez. She has no background in sexual violence. She has no forensic background. She has no legal, nothing. She made up the whole thing about the fetus being ripped out.
Yeah.
So you have, I actually just read that again. I found that was one of from the Intercept, but this also came out from the UN report as well. So it wasn't just like one independent media organization that's trying to make things horrible on one side or the other. But I think you and I can both appreciate, all of y'all can appreciate, let's find out what really happened, right? Let's not make up a bunch of bullshit. Let's really find out what happened and bring these people to justice, because one of the things that I can't appreciate about the UN is that they did put in the arrest warrants for the leaders of Hamas for the war crimes they committed. And I agree with that 100%. But they also put in Netanyahu and some of his staff alongside with it for the war crimes they're committing. There is no deniability that
let me
one but not the other.
Sure. Let me stop you right there on one of the things, because I do agree that there is a debate on whether or not some of these atrocities happened. And let's say they didn't. Let's say there's no evidence of that. What I do know, because I've seen for myself, there was actually video coming from Palestinians where they were leading, they had women in the back of the trucks. There was one woman that it looked like to me, and that's what the report was, that her Achilles tendons were slashed. They were dragging these women through the street naked. Those are all videos that people can find on, you're not going to find it on YouTube, but Live Leak and some of these other ones that I have seen. Now, you are not going to, you're never going to hear me argue that Israel isn't excellent at propaganda. I don't doubt that they are. I do think that they're very determined, that they see their right to exist. I think they're very determined, and they feel like, right or wrong, I'm just saying this is what I see their perspective as. They feel like there's a major portion of the world against them, and they are going to they have resorted for sure in the past to desperate measures And I think that, we as Americans and our government commits all kinds of problems when it comes to propaganda, not putting out the truth, for manipulation of our own people, for manipulation of the outside world and everything else. With that being said, when we like, I completely understand where you're coming from, and you're trying to say, hey, this is the dynamic going on within Israel. I do think that, October 7th, whatever credibility Hamas and ultimately the Palestinians had, and I know you would probably disagree with me combining those two or conflating those two, and that's fine. But
Well,
I do think that there's
about
that's
too.
fine. I do think that there's an overwhelming majority of Palestinians that support Hamas.
Yeah, that's what I just looked up as well. Recent polls on that.
And maybe it's because of their own desperation, and that's fine. So I don't know that if we sit here and quibble about the exact reports, hey, did they behead babies? Did they not? Fact is, they went in and they committed a major act of terrorism on a pretty sophisticated scale, that we hadn't seen before. That was actually pretty shocking. So I guess that's kind of where I personally stand on that.
Yeah, I had Googled and did some looking around because I wanted to see. In my mind, there is a big portion of Palestinian support for Hamas.
Okay.
So I kind of wanted to fact check and look around. This is from Foundation for Defense of Democracy, polls done in Palestine. There's overwhelming support. Palestinian support for Hamas in the West Bank and Gaza remains high from a Palestinian poll released on March 20th. That support has increased since the Iran-backed terrorist group attacked Israel on October 7th. Let me scrolling down to where we get some actual numbers. According to the poll, only 7% of Gazans blamed Hamas for their suffering. 71% of all Palestinians supported Hamas's decision to attack Israel on October 7th. 59% of all Palestinians think Hamas should rule Gaza, and 70% were satisfied with the role Hamas has played during the war. So, I think in a lot of people's view, Palestine supports Hamas, and they are grouped together, whether or not that's wrong or right. And you can speak to that, but
Sure.
in a lot of people's view that Hamas,
They're inseparable.
Yeah, they're inseparable.
So if I vote for Trump, does that mean I should be punished for what Trump does?
No.
Okay. So we're talking collective punishment.
Well, no. What we're talking about is an act of war.
Again, no, but the same thing is that those people that actually did that because they support it doesn't necessarily mean they had anything to do with it.
Yeah.
You can have people that support to go in Iraq because people that didn't support going to Iraq. Does that mean that they should be punished, like killed?
It's one thing to vote for Trump and then he does something and you say, hey, I disagree with that.
Sure.
These people agree with the actions on October 7th. They
and even if they
agree, the same thing. They weren't part of it, though.
I understand what you're saying. No, I don't think that they should be punished because of the acts of Hamas, whether they support Hamas or not. What the reality, though, is that, they know, or Hamas knew, that if that attack took place, look, they were going to war with Israel. And that is what war is going to look like. I don't know, the numbers are all over the place with the amount of Iraqis killed. They shouldn't have gotten punished for what Saddam Hussein did. And chances are, and we could go into that, like, we don't even know that Saddam Hussein did anything. He was not a good guy. We can agree on that. But I don't know that he did anything that was worthy of us going in, losing soldiers, and ultimately, killing, being responsible for the death of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Iraqis. But that is the nature of war. And I think that's what Hamas brought upon them. And with any terrorist group, and you can tell me if you disagree, like, you got to go in and you got to extract those people. And if they're going to hide in populated areas, you can be as careful as you want. And I know the argument will be, in it may even be true, that Israel is specifically targeting, I I don't believe that they're specifically targeting civilians. I do believe that they're specifically targeting people that they see as high value targets in populated areas because that's where they're hiding. I do believe that the nature of this conflict is very different. It's very akin to what we saw in World War II with a lot of the things that were going on. I mean, people get wrapped up in war, and and trust me, I have a lot of empathy for the people in Palestine because they have nowhere to go, and I get it.
And we're talking about an area that's 25 by 5, right?
Yeah.
And it's
No,
enclosed in a
with
wall in the ocean. They can't go anywhere.
Which does lead to a question that's been asked multiple times in the feed: is how many Arab countries have taken in the Palestinians?
Jordan has, I think, even
so 2 million in Jordan, 250,000 in Lebanon. Syria has, I think, 157,000. I mean, the list goes on.
There you go.
But the thing is, but why hasn't Israel taken him? If they're really concerned about civilians, how come Israel hasn't taken civilians in?
Because I don't. I mean, I think that's the answer that they're going to give, and I do think that's
Hamas.
No. The answer that they're going to give, and I think is a legitimate, is a security concern because they don't know who Hamas is, and they don't know who's going to commit an act of terror within them.
So how do they know who they're targeting?
Well, there are confirmed, just like we have HVTs, we have targets that we've developed, we know, but what we don't know, here's what we're not going to do, is we are not going to go into a target, and we're not going to kill all the bad guys. And then the other people that are around there, now we're suddenly going to bring them back to the team house. So we don't know that the people that are associated with these HVTs are necessarily, we haven't cleared them. We haven't vetted them. We have a certain amount of people that we've vetted that we know for a fact are threats. And we are there in that compound, that village, that city, whatever it is. And other people are going to get wrapped up in it, but we haven't vetted the people that are associated with them, whether that be a spatial or geographic association or an actual personal relationship association. So we can't bring those people back to our team house. That to me is what we're talking about. And that is I do think that there's a real security risk between there. I guess
if we talk about the level of devastation on there between 2014 and 2017, the U.S. coalition forces, they did 15,000 strikes across the whole of Iraq, right? 15,000.
Sure.
But they had done 22,000 strikes in 1 week. This was 6 months ago when I actually found out that information, when I got that statistic. 22,000 in 1 week.
22,000 in 1 week.
Yes, in 1 week. I mean, we're talking about like a level of devastation we haven't seen in anywhere, including World War II, because if you compare like Dresden or anything else, we have already surpassed that months ago. And again, we're talking about a 25 by 5 enclosed, right, where they can't go anywhere. And then they were saying, go to this safe spot. Let's talk about that, real quick about, the people that you're not talking about deliberately. Hinge Rajab is a big, or we can even talk about the world, the World Central Kitchen, right? You had 3 different vehicles spaced out apart, and there's accurate video footage of this. There's audio of this. This is everything from there. They targeted that.
I'm not going to hear disagreement out of this. There's definitely been situations, whether it was deliberate or not, where Israel has designated safety zones for civilians, non-combatants to go to that have ultimately been bombed, been assaulted, whatever else. And
but the whole leaflets thing is where they're going to go.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? It's a 25 by 5, and you literally have the highest most densely populated place in the entire world, and they're enclosed in these walls. Where are they going to go? You know what I mean?
No.
And that's
and on top of that, their method of communication, like if I'm the one terrorist and I'm now in, let's say a village, and they drop leaflets, says, hey, if you're a non-combatant,
go to this.
You need to go. Like, we're all going there. So
yeah.
It's a bad system to begin with. So I am going to, in the name of my own safety, I'm going to go there and potentially put everybody else at risk. I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm not saying that this wasn't intentional on Israel's part. I'm not saying that wasn't the absolute exact plan, knowing that if they drop these leaflets and they told them where to go to be safe, guess what? We're going to get all our HVTs in one basket, and we're going to take them out, and who cares if civilians are killed? I wouldn't even put that past them. So you're not going to hear disagreement on me on that.
And there's literally no functioning hospitals. All the schools have been destroyed. I mean, these are structures to, the destruction of the area for the infrastructure itself. And they had planned this all along. There was people saying, we will make this unlivable, right? And again, you have to think about the sheer size and the number of people that are there. We're talking like over 2 million people in a 25 by 5 area. You see what I mean? And so when they designate these safe zones, and we're talking about like the deliberate, Hen Rajab was the 5-year-old that was actually, and this will break your heart. I don't care who you are. I don't care what side you're on. But when you hear a little girl saying, everyone in the car is dead, I don't know what to do. And the operator saying, hey, we have people coming up. So the Red Crescent had 2 ambulances coming out. They had cleared it with them. They had yes, we are cleared to get this girl out. And they're on the phone with her. And then those 2 guys got sniped. And there was 355 shots to that vehicle that killed her. 355. It's not a mistake. A mistake is 1, maybe 2. If it's fully automatic, let's say 5. 355. I mean, it's a 5-year-old child. And for people to say, "Oh, that's war," I'm gonna never mind.
No,
That's not war. That's a slaughter. That's a genocide.
I'm curious where that number came from, but that's beside the point. Obviously, the girl died. Let me ask you this: if you had a magic wand, what do you think is the answer?
I honestly don't think that a 2-state solution is viable anymore. I honestly don't.
I agree with that.
You got to stop doing that, man, because you said initially at the beginning of the call we weren't going to agree on shit.
I've disagreed with you in plenty of places. I want to highlight the places where we agree.
Hey, reasonable people, equally informed, seldom disagree. And if we actually go through this conversation and we agree at least on half of things, I think we've gotten like tenfold further than anyone else that I've actually had a conversation with that's against it, opposed to that. So it's literally just from listening to perspective that I think we can actually, gain an understanding of the situation and actually like to move in the right direction for it. Whether you call it like the Holy Land or anything else, I honestly think that it needs to be a 1-state solution. And again, talking to especially
define what you mean by that, a 1-state solution. What again, I'm curious to see if what your 1-state solution means, if it's the same as my 1-state solution.
1-state solution, no occupation. Everyone has equal rights. Everyone's treated the exact same way. There's no social, ethnic, racial separation. Basically look at the same way that, and it's taken a while for South Africa to recover, but I think it's definitely on the up and up. I mean, you can look at, even Ireland, how it's, recuperated from that.
Sure.
But I honestly, in my opinion, from the research that I've done and from everything I've seen, I honestly think that a 1-state solution would be the only viable option. And again, when I spoke to a lot of business owners actually in the West Bank, and the one thing that I heard that was literally like verbatim, like from everyone, literally like it was scripted almost, was we just want to, get our business going. We just want to live, we don't want to fight. They want to get along. You know what I mean? But when you have the constant risk of, the IDF coming in and smashing up the shop, which there's a man, I can send you a picture of this later, one of the nicest old men that I met out there in the old city in Hebron. And the IDF comes in there constantly and breaks his stuff in there, takes all his flags down, stuffs them in the toilet, harasses him. I mean, I got a video of that, what happened just a couple of days ago, and I mean, honestly, people are just, they're fed up with being pushed. And I think that's one thing that always has to be recognized, is that it doesn't matter who you are, what religion you are, what ethnicity you are. there will always be resistance to oppression. As long as people are oppressed, and I mean legitimately oppressed, there's always going to be a resistance to it. So there's no more slave rebellions because we don't have slavery, any slaves to rebel against.
Sure.
So if you take away the inequality, if you take away, people to be able to marry whoever they want, just not be able to marry because they're Palestinian on the other side of the wall. So families are constantly separated, not based on religion. And I think one of the big things you'll be able to see is like how Christians and Muslims get along is Bethlehem itself. I think that was a big testament to, like, again, eliminating the religious thing. We already discussed that earlier on. But that's where a lot of the, you can see the integration of people regardless of what their backgrounds are. Even in where I was at in Hebron, where I spent most of my time, the only Jews that they saw, again, were like the settlers in the IDF. So I don't think a lot of them had a good understanding of what other Jews actually do. And so when people say like they hate Jews, the only Jews that they've ever seen are the settlers and the IDF. But the Christians that are there, or anyone else, one of the things that was like stood out was, again, I'm atheist, but no one asked me, when they said, welcome, come sit down, have coffee with me, no one asked me what my religion was until after they said welcome. And I think that's a big part of that, to understand that they wouldn't welcome you over if they didn't like whatever you were. They would find out first what you were and then welcome you over. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
But even as one of the things that I found amusing was the whole like infidel, kill the infidel. And no one denies that sits in the Quran, but that actually was referring to polytheism, the rise of polytheism in the Middle East. But they actually love Jesus. They got surahs, chapters, full chapters in the Quran about Jesus and his miracles. They got it about Mary. They got it about Moses. You see what I mean? So it's like it's an Abrahamic religion that they have no problem with that. And you know what? They didn't give a shit. I was atheist.
Yeah.
They actually, I got in a conversation with one of them and they called me a seeker, someone who seeks knowledge, someone who basically the way they interpreted it was like someone who's looking for knowledge, looking for understanding, looking for, whatever they're trying to be. And I was like, I can get on board with that. It's fine with me.
I have
But
a quick
no one gives a
question
shit. Yes,
for
ma'am.
you that I've been thinking about for a minute, and this kind of brings it back around. Is, do you think because you were in the West Bank and you said you talked to many different people, many different viewpoints, do you think because you're in the West Bank, your sampling of people that you talked to had a certain bias?
And what aspect?
A pro-Palestinian bias, so that perhaps some of your stories that you were told came from that sort of bias.
Basically, she's just asking, like, were the people that you were talking to providing a certain slant that,
I didn't.
Due to the area.
Yeah.
So the only people that I actually spoke to from the area before I got there was actually Israelis. I spoke to IDF-SF guy, spoke to another IDF guy. And the reason why the military is just, that was the only type of connection I could have with someone from Israel. And I actually lived with an Israeli for a few months, actually. We were actually good friends until all this happened. And then she kind of got all pissed off.
So I guess the answer to her question is you feel like you've had lots of good information. Your sample size of information
comes from all different sides.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And I think
I wasn't saying it didn't. I just wanted to ask the question to.
I understand both sides' perspective. I mean, is that what you're saying? Like, do I not understand like why the Israelis are pissed off?
I mean, yeah, I guess it leads to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I got that. I literally got that before. That was actually one of the reasons why I wanted to go, is because I was like, okay, I don't know. I've never been there. You see what I mean? And I don't know what to expect. So I wanted to go in there, and I didn't sign up with any organization other than GMR, not the NGO, but I didn't sign up with nonprofits. I didn't sign up with any type of organization within the West Bank, because I wanted to at least the first month kind of see what was going on.
Yeah.
And actually get my own perspective of it, before I kind of got into it and saw what was actually going inside there. But within 2 months, I had a gun drawn on me 9 times by the IDF. And again, I'm a tourist. I'm not there with a plate carrier. I'm not there, wearing a keffiyeh. I was literally a tourist.
Do you think that because they saw the people that you were talking to, and
I was by myself.
Why do you think they were drawing a gun on you? I guess is my point. What is your
I was
opinion?
walking down there was one time I was walking down the old city and I was looking up, taking pictures. And one guy just drew a gun onto me from one of the towers.
Because you're a big, scary dude. That's why.
And you are 5th degree black belt.
No, well, let me ask you this. My question to that is, what is, from the Israeli perspective, what would your answer to be? Hey, you know what? We constantly get rocket attacks. We're doing these things because it really, I think we're, my observation of what I've looked at it in Israel and Palestine is that you potentially have a lot of good people on both sides that are caught up in a freaking tit for tat that aren't going to let it go. And I don't know, because it does seem like, and again, we're not there. I don't see some of the things you described as far as antagonistic methods and tactics that are probably very often put in upon the Palestinian people. But
I can guarantee that what Netanyahu is doing right now in Gaza is not helping the situation whatsoever. I mean, Hamas was comprised of 7% orphans before. What do you think the recruiting is going to be now?
Sure.
I mean,
I think Netanyahu's perspective, right or wrong, is to do whatever it takes to eliminate the threat, and it's gonna include other.
We've learned through history in Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, that shit's not going to work. You can't kill an ideology.
I don't disagree with you, but not everybody has learned that.
They learned that through Hezbollah during the occupation of Lebanon from 1982 to 2000. They learned their lesson then, and there's plenty of people that actually attest to that. Not me, not Americans, but actual Israelis are like, yeah, that was like the worst mistake we could have made, because you cannot kill an ideology of that. As long as we occupy, we're going to constantly get attacked. And so if you have that understanding of that, I mean, that's the whole point of it. I think what actually has driven me more than anything else to be involved in that, going back to your original question, was what burns me up is having a conversation with a friend of mine that works in the VA and saying that the programs that she's working for right now are going to be cut for funding, but yet we're spending $22 billion for these fuckers and actually, sending it overseas. So regardless of what you think about the whole the Israel and, Gaza, pro-Palestine or not, the fact that we're actually sending the money that we have, that we actually need for our own veterans, or even just our own Americans, for fuck's sake, you know what I mean? And we're sending that overhead.
Well, I look, when it comes down to it, I am more of an isolationist than ever.
Absolutely.
I think you're absolutely right. We have way too many problems here in the United States that our own tax dollars should be going to. I do agree that we should not be sending the money that we're sending to Israel until we got our shit taken care of here at home. We shouldn't be sending it to Ukraine. We shouldn't be sending it to all the other enemies of the world that we're sending it to. We shouldn't be funding the Taliban. We got a lot of issues going on, and our veterans are not taken care of. We have infrastructure issues here in the United States, and somehow we don't have any money for these things, but we can send hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine.
I want to keep my money.
We can send billions of dollars every single year to Israel. Like, hey,
they have a much better healthcare system. They have a much better education system. You've
been around since 1948, bro. Like, you got your big boy pants on now. You guys be your own country. And here's the other thing. If we actually took away that funding, I guarantee you that the whole political negotiation methods would actually increase, because they wouldn't have the backing of us. But notice how many times they start instigating by pushing into Lebanon, bombing in Syria. They're starting to instigate stuff so we can actually get involved. That's another thing that pisses me off. It's like, you know what? You want to start your own wars? By all means, do it by your own. Fuck off. Do it on your, do it by yourself. Yeah. But don't bring us into another one, because, I mean, for fuck's sake, we actually have, you and I don't know about you, but I brought the fucking war back with me. You know what I mean? It fucked me up in the head. Yeah.
And I know that a lot of people did as well.
Yeah.
And so for, until we get that, and we have an epidemic of veteran suicide, I think it's gotten better down to 19 a day. We've had 150,000 that actually killed themselves since, the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Until we get these things resolved, which should be the freaking priority. No, we should not be sending a dime over there. Not at all. Hey, they're doing just fine. Their GDP is actually really high. They're doing just fine. And I promise you, they would use much more, political means to actually negotiate within their neighbors. And don't tell me it's like, oh no, they just want to kill the Jews. Even in their own Hamas charter says that in Article 16 says this has nothing to do with Judaism or people as Jews and their faith. It has to do with the colonial Zionists and whatever. I can't quote it, but I hate being put in a position where I have to defend Hamas because I don't support them either.
Well, I do think that it's constantly conflated, and both sides do it to some extent, right? So you can disagree with Israel on a political scale and not be anti-Semitic.
Anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
You Hamas can hate Israel and not hate them because of their religion. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know what's in the heart of those people. I don't really care. And honestly, to some extent, for better or for worse, that is kind of my position that I have. You talk about bringing the war home with you, Alan, and I'm sure, I look back at the reasons, 9/11 happened, and a couple of days later, I was in the recruiting station, and that's, I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to go kill these motherfuckers that attacked my country. I didn't care. I didn't know the first thing about the military. I walked in there. They were like, hey, what do you want to do? I was like, I don't know. I just want to fight. Whatever that is. And, looking back at what has happened and taking a more mature look at it, a more realistic look at it, having hindsight, the benefit of hindsight 2020, I feel like I was duped. I feel like in many ways, whether we're talking about the war in Afghanistan, whether we're talking about the war in Iraq, whether we're talking about all the other conflicts that we've been involved with, I look back and, man, I'm like, what did we do that for? Why did I believe that this was worth dying for? What did I think that this was going to fix? And I don't know if you feel that way, but I definitely do.
I fucking agree 100%.
Yeah.
I think the last just war that we're in was World War II. That was it. That was the end of it. Everything else.
Ironically, it was the last one that we won. Not including the Gulf War, but that really wasn't a war. But those freaking dumps, they had it easy. But the reality is that we haven't had a really a just war. And I think, I used to make fun of people when I was younger. I remember right around the time 9/11 took place is when I started getting very interested in politics and started looking at chat rooms and having these debates with people about politics or whatever else. And every now and then, and it would just shut me down. Somebody would bring up the military industrial complex. And I was like, you're done. I'm done with you. Just shut up. You just are spouting words. But let me tell you something, being here in the DC area, working in DC, understanding how this stuff works, seeing what's going on in Ukraine. If you just sit back and just let everything go and you just come to a basic conclusion of what the evidence presents, there is clearly a military industrial complex. There is clearly a medical industrial complex. And those two things here in the country are running this country in ways that I don't think we really understand. And we have a government that's manipulating us. Whether you feel like Hamas is manipulating people or Israel is manipulating people, we got a bigger problem, we as Americans, of how we're being manipulated, used, and our sons and daughters and our futures are being sent off to die so that people can legit make money.
Well, real question though.
Yeah.
And we've been together 20 years, folks, and I still have new questions for this guy.
I don't talk to you.
But so what's your answer to 9/11 then? If it's not to go take the fight to them,
What was the setup?
what's your answer to 9/11?
15 out of the 21 people that hijacked the planes were from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
How come we didn't invade Saudi Arabia?
Sure. Yeah, I'm just saying, you know, if we
And here's another like interesting point. The only flight that was actually like in the air, the only one, because everything else was grounded in the United States of America, every single flight except for one flight, and that contained the Osama bin Laden's family.
Yeah, that was being sent out of the country. I do.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Interesting.
and that's the thing. And
I like
folks,
these conversations.
This is only the stuff that we have end up hearing through the kind of the zeitgeist. Maybe I'm trying to put both people on here. You know what? Here's the mouse. She keeps yelling at me about how I'm manipulating.
People want to see your resting asshole
nobody
face
wants
when
to
you're
see
talking.
my-
Thank
Listen.
you for letting everybody Google something now. I appreciate that.
What?
What he just said.
About the plane being in the air.
Nobody knew that.
You didn't know that?
Hell no.
No, my question wasn't about going to Iraq. It was
We also
you basically are like, you know, none of these wars are just. So like,
No,
my
absolutely
question
not.
was, you know, how do you answer? no?
Iraq never. Well, that's the whole thing. Is whether you're
Are you saying
Sorry.
if we would have went to war with Saudi Arabia, that would have been a just war in answer to 9/11?
I'm not. No.
no.
Oh,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Gary.
I think there's clear evidence that we've been manipulated. I'm not going to sit here and pretend. Hold on. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know the answers to it.
Sure.
I think
That's a good way to put
every single reason what happened on 9/11, I think is not what we think it is.
Nope.
It's definitely not what we were told. And there's no way that I could prove it, but you know, everything screams that we were manipulated on a global scale, and I don't have a good answer for you. And on top of that,
we need to
not only did we have one plane that took Osama bin Laden's family out, within a few days of that, we also made sure that we had all the Saudi royal Arabs in this area. They were also sent back to Saudi Arabia. They were basically by the U.S. government,
and also missing money.
Here's another one. If you get a chance, John Mearsheimer wrote a really good book called the Israel Lobby.
I don't read.
It's on Audible.
He doesn't read. He can't
He
read.
said it's on Audible.
No.
Get out of your books.
I have to read
What
them every
was-
night.
Alan, what was that book?
The Israel Lobby. John
We'll add
Mearsheimer.
it to the dusty bookshelf of books he never reads.
Another one that's interesting is the unspoken alliance between South Africa, apartheid South Africa, and Israel.
There we go. Summer has another book to read to Gary at night.
Yep.
But as far as 9/11, I started kind of actually doing a lot more of like an understanding of like what we were doing, like just wars and such, and then I started kind of like I gotta find one. And so I was like, Somalia's got to be it. We went in there to take out Mohammed Farah Aidid, 1993. That was just because he was a warlord. He was terrorizing everybody, and then, God damn it, did I find out BP, Shell, Chevron, and Exxon were trying to drill off the coast of Somalia.
Well, look,
So that had nothing to do with that. And then people were like, for years, telling me, you're such a conspiracy, you're full of shit. What do we have now? We got U.S. bases in Somalia, and we're drilling off the coast of Somalia with the puppet president they have put in.
Well, I think if
Redemption.
Puppet president.
I think if anyone is so
Jesus,
silly
easy.
that they think that we go to war over righteousness, then you're a fucking moron.
Yeah. The U.S. doesn't have friends; it only has interests.
We justify. We use situations to justify a means to an end
Every time.
to some sort of gain. Now, look, I am not necessarily. I want to be clear on this. Look, I think the U.S. with the full force of our capabilities needs to ensure our future. I am not going to apologize to anybody. Like, you know what? If you're over, I'll just leave it like that. We need to do things that are in our own interest.
Well, you need to define.
Well, and that's the problem. And that's the problem. Is
We the people.
We the people, our interests. And that is the problem. Is that we the people get manipulated by people that are in power. And I'm not talking about a president. I'm not talking about a Congress.
Nope.
I'm talking about people that spend a lot of time and money. And here's the thing, you know, I hate the idea of anybody talking about a conspiracy theory.
No, you don't.
Like what
Then
we
stop
have.
fucking making all the goddamn transcripts and all the files like classified where no one can read it. The only
Well,
time conspiracy theories come out is when they hide shit.
Yeah.
Well,
Ding.
the thing is it's not a conspiracy theory. There's constant conspiracies because there's some really smart people in think tanks and all these different organizations from, you know, academia, from government. There are people behind the scenes that are putting things together that in their mind is justified. Like, hey, this is a really great plan. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to manipulate the people's will and interest in this direction. And this is
Because
how
it's
we're
for
going to
their
do
own
it.
good.
And this is 40, 50, 60-year plans that they put out, that because we're not that hard to manipulate. And now that we have social media, folks, we're even dumber and we're easier to manipulate than ever before, because now they can streamline that information, that misinformation into our brains.
Hell yeah.
60% of the company,
It's
the
not just
country,
social media; it's mainstream media. Come on now.
Hell
Yeah.
yeah.
whatever you, all of
It's
it.
an
all of
IV. It's an IV.
It's a direct line of bullshit, and people are so stupid. They're like, "Oh, this is great. Give me more." And that's
Oh, Taylor Swift likes that. All
yeah,
right,
like,
I believe it.
Ukraine, it's in our interest to go to war with Ukraine to stop Russia that has more nuclear bombs than we do, and we're going to go over there and freaking rattle a cage that doesn't even need to be. Like, leave Putin alone. Like,
Fucking Lindsey Graham even like let the cat out of the bag just a week ago, saying like we cannot let Russia get all the trillions of dollars worth of interest in Ukrainian resources. We have to take it back. And I'm like, but the thing is, I realized like after he said that, like no one's gonna give a shit. No one's gonna actually look up what he's talking about. He
No.
literally was saying that's exactly. We're not talking for the Ukrainian freedom. We're not talking about any other than that. Than for us and corporations here in the United States to actually have a better price for themselves. And it's not going to affect us. They're going to keep fucking spiking our prices. We're still going to have an inflation system that's like drowning us in debt, but it's going to make them and their shareholders a lot more rich.
Well,
and we're going to send American sons and daughters, you know, to actually go fight for them.
Yeah, and let's be real. If politicians and there was enough emotion in the country for it, we would have U.S. forces in Ukraine right now dying along the side of Ukrainians. And the question is, why? That is absolutely retarded. And there another portion of this that, you know, we've talked about on this podcast many times, I believe is 100% true, is the fact that there is a real effort to deconstruct the United States. There is a real effort to diminish this country in its ability to produce, in its ability to to defend itself, its ability to be an economic power. What?
You asked me earlier about like what my stance is on this, right? Like party wise and so forth.
Sure.
I can't stand them both. I think that if you have one bomb with two wings, it takes those two wings to detonate the bottom. So it takes one. Not it would just spin out of control, right? But you have to have like one against the other. And the thing is, I think it's turned into almost like a idiocracy where you have, you know, it's almost like a WWE match where they're high-fiving in the back, you know, like, you know, see how we got them over there. And look who's getting rich off of that. You know, for the first time, actually, I was so like happy to see this where they were saying like there's no more stock. You know, they were trying to bring a bill to no more stock trading if you're within a public office that can influence, you know, decision making. And I was like, that is like by far the most that we've actually, because if you actually look, and the reason why I came up with this, if you actually look at the politicians that make the most money, right? And I'll be honest with you, I was not expecting this. The number one, and listen to me first because it doesn't even matter, but we're the top 2, 3, 4, 5 are literally like within like 100,000 range of each other, but they're literally fucking multimillionaires.
Sure.
And we're talking like Republican, Democrat, Republican, and it goes down the line. All of them are, and then you start seeing like how much money they're making off these, you know, policies that just affect themselves, and all these lobbying, all these lobbyists that actually like direct them to that, making them rich for themselves, and it's basically a self-beneficial thing. I mean, I think we should have technology. In my opinion, is what makes a civilization great, what makes it thrive. without technological advances, we start going into a third world country. We start falling behind because we depend on other countries for that. So we need American scientists. We need
100%.
American technology. We need American education to get, actually start producing like what it should. We need American, it should be, and I don't mean this in the sense, we can make this country into a phenomenal country that it should be, instead of us rotting away. How do we have like the highest GDP and then still have 500,000 homeless?
Alan, the phrase is "Make America Great Again."
And real quick to your point, Alan, do you know that there are now stock funds that track the congressional picks and follow those, and their returns much higher than the average?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, the real problem,
because they're crooked.
Right.
They are.
All you gotta do is invest in the same things as Nancy Pelosi, and you're good to go.
Nancy Pelosi is like, and now she doesn't even make the top 10.
Well, I need to look up the list.
Yes, look up the list. I shit you not. There was a woman. I think she's like number 2. She literally bought like a $200 million like yacht. You know what I mean?
Lucky.
If my belief in like, if you're serving public office, you should not allowed to be to have any other source of income the time you're in office and 10 years after, because everything, all the policies you should be making should be for the people, not for yourself. It should be able to influence anything. And you should, like, I guarantee you, 1 month, just give it 1 fucking month where everyone like it's in a public office. That's all the salary you get.
Oh
God, Alan, we lost you.
Alan, they cut him off.
You were revealing too much, Alan.
He was telling too much.
You were pulling the curtain back too far. We'll wait for Alan to come back on here. Up. We got a pulse, maybe. We got a pulse. Yeah, look, I think one of the biggest problems
Kind of went off the rails from the original topic.
Oh
But
my God!
Yeah.
all good, relevant information.
Well, we were focused on what we agree on.
Yep.
Not focusing on what we disagree on.
Yeah. Number 1 wealthiest member of Congress is Rick Scott from Florida.
Rick Scott?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. His net worth is $200.3 million.
Was it?
$200 million.
He ain't even
$200
holding a
million.
stick.
Net worth.
He ain't even holding a stick to me.
Rick Scott, huh?
Yeah.
What did he do before he got into politics?
I don't know.
Rick Scott was the governor of
He's a former venture capitalist, so that and founder of a couple of healthcare companies. So
he was a former governor of Florida and then became a senator after. Right? Am I getting that right? He was a governor,
I
right?
think they might have canceled Alan.
You can't cancel Alan. You cancel Alan.
That or he's getting a bad storm. He's on the old Elon internets. Oh, wait.
Oh, no.
He might be coming back. Yeah, he was governor of Florida. Beat Charlie Crist. That's right. Yep. And then after that, he was 2-term governor of Florida, and then term limits by 2018.
He's gone
for good.
He's gone.
Maybe
he might have logged out and he's logged back in.
Yeah.
This goes back to what Alan was saying. I completely agree with, and I think, and if you guys remember, probably like 4 months ago, I got in here. I was like, look, I think we are beyond the precipice of ever bringing America back. I think we're looking at the end of America in the next 20, 30 years as we know it, right?
I'll be dead.
And I guess if I was to quantify that,
years?
I guess if I was to quantify that, I would say, like, hey, we're not going to be a superpower.
I drink a lot of whiskey.
Or considered the superpower in the next 20 years.
I'm glad we didn't have more babies.
I could be, or could. Well, no, they're going to be survivors. Going to be out there. We'll be like a militia with sticks.
And you'll be in your wheelchair
Bring
trying to
him
get
back
through the
on.
woods.
There he is. Hold on. Here, use the mouse. Click on his screen since I can't click screens correctly.
I said that. Let's see what happened.
I know.
Alan,
we're like they shut him down.
Alan, like
son of a bitch.
Like 4 months ago, I got on here. I was talking about. I don't remember what was. I've been thinking
You're
about
in
this.
One of your usual rants.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this for a long time, but I really do believe like the greatest days of America. Like I am not that optimistic as far as America's future. I think the greatest days of America are probably over unless something drastic happens. And one of those things that I would say that would be a drastic that could put us back on the right track is term limits. I think, what we've done is we've created what we fought against in the Revolutionary Wars is we've created a political theocracy, not theocracy, a aristocracy, right? We now have a king that we elect every 4 years that really is just a figurehead, much like the King of England.
I like
does
king.
nothing. And then the rest of it, we have an aristocracy that can do whatever they want. They make all the money. They're not really there for the people. They're there to get rich off the people. And what would solve that is exactly how we founded this country. We had, the everyday person, the people by, with, and for that. We created this government through the people, by the people, for the people. And these were business owners that understood everyday workings of America and had to make a living with the conditions that they put on themselves or they created. And what we've done is by allowing these politicians to have unlimited resources, essentially, unlimited term limits, unlimited term limits. That's redundant.
Unlimited terms.
I too have been punched and blown up a bunch.
And unlimited wallets.
I'm retarded most of the time. But that's what we've done. We've taken this class of people that we elect and we completely separate them from the conditions that they create here in the United States. And it doesn't mean anything to them anymore. It's all about self-preservation and it's all about maintaining the power. And until we get to term limits, I think our country's doomed. I really do. We're on such a decline. And I think we've actually gone over that precipice sometime back. I'm not sure when. I don't know. Maybe it was at $30 trillion of debt. But I think we're past it. And I hope I'm wrong, but I don't have a lot of faith in the future of this country.
Man, we got to stop we have to stop agreeing so much.
Yeah. Or,
I agree 100%. And that's the thing is you shouldn't be able to die in office. Right. I mean, that shouldn't be. I mean, if we put limits on like how long you can be able to work, for us, 65, okay, that's 65 is now the limit for when that is the cutoff. You cannot run anything past that. If you are 64 and you run for office, that's fine. But if you're 65 and above, that's it. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
We're literally like the two people that we have right now. It's like picking between gonorrhea and syphilis, because you have two people that are 2 years apart. You got to admit that both sides have like literally their mental cognizance is gone. Yeah. And it just happens with age.
Well, and they're not even, we always talk about Biden being a zombie president, but the fact of the matter is 100% he is. He has no idea what's going on. Everybody around him put something, whatever you want to put, he's Ron Burgundy, whatever you want to put on a freaking teleprompter, he's going to read it. And he just did, by the way. I forgot something. It was like completely stupid. It was like the average house is now $55, and it was like supposed to be like 150,000. But whatever you put on the prompter, including punctuation,
including typos,
including whatever else, that dude's gonna read it. He's gonna like, we are gonna turn the earth into a pyramid. Like you can put whatever you want on there. So but that's what we have. We have a lot of these, older, detached. Politicians that their aides, the people around them are running things, but it goes back to what I said. We got to get people, and that's one of the things that I think a lot of people do connect with Donald Trump is he didn't go into office because he wanted to earn a paycheck. He was built. You can talk about whether he was self-built or his dad did this, whatever you want to try to take away from him. But the fact of the matter is he's drastically more successful and more smarter. He's more smarter about that. But he's smarter. He's accomplished more than 99% of all Americans, and I think that's one thing that people do appreciate about him. I know I do. It's one thing that I do like about him is that he doesn't need to be in office to make a freaking paycheck.
And he's failed multiple times and been able to recover from that, which is another thing.
He had 8 bankruptcies. He's a terrible businessman. Like the average billionaire probably has 15 bankruptcies. My God, whatever it is, you're going to fail. That's not a demerit in my view. That like you tell me, so we have a president that has failed and then got up, brushed himself off, and got back after it. That's who I want to
The
see.
problem that I have with that is that he actually created more debt for the United States than any other
Yep.
president
I have a
combined.
problem with that too. No.
You know what I mean? So if you want to bankrupt
Hold
yourself,
on.
that's one thing, but you can't bankrupt the country for it.
Hold on. No, actually, President Obama created more debt than Trump did, and you can look that up. That was something that somebody just brought that up.
Please send me that, because
I will.
everything I've read is just the opposite.
You're listening to the MSM, bro.
No, fuck that. Come on, man. I thought we weren't going to do personal attacks.
Let's see.
We're both Googling for the
which-
source. I'm
President.
interested to see the facts for myself too,
And
because I don't know.
And I will say, look, I'm going to hold Trump accountable for the fact that a lot of what happened with COVID, he has to be held responsible for, because he let a bunch of asshats that he surrounded himself, like Fauci and many others, he stepped back. And here's the thing, you know, with that, he couldn't have won for losing, because at the times that he pushed back against them, we had a lot of Americans saying, you're not listening to the professionals. But then when he went with the professionals and we implemented all this stuff and we implemented all this debt that, by the way, both parties voted for, and the Democrats were pushing specifically.
I got, if the
More debt. Hold
table
on.
would ever load, I'd have the
Yeah.
table of debt.
But you know, the fact is that you do have to hold him responsible for that. The other thing I'll be the first to say is that, you know, I'm a Second Amendment absolutist. You know, when it comes to Trump, he's done some dumb things when it comes to the Second Amendment. But I also know that he is a dumb New Yorker. And there's lots of, I even have my buddy, he's 18 Bravo, Jason. You know, he's a little weird on the Second Amendment. And I'm like, dude, I just want to choke you, because he's from New York and he was raised in a culture that's very different. I will say, I don't think we're going to see that this term.
Yeah, Donald Trump is below Barack Obama.
Yeah. Barack Obama has created more debt with the.
What's your source?
This is Investopedia.com, and it has a table of many different presidents. It presents it by dollar amount, total change, as well as percentage total change.
Yeah.
Actually, top of the line percentage wise was Franklin Delano Roosevelt, but Barack Obama was a 64.4% change. Donald Trump was a 33.1% change, according to this website and chart.
Yeah.
So
it was Barack Obama.
So I'm looking at one from ProPublica and it's saying Trump.
That's a left-wing rag, bro.
Okay.
No, I don't know what that source is. Like I said, everything that I've looked up on that.
Given that is the first source I did click on, but it's called Investopedia.com.
You know, and I'll be honest with you, and this has nothing to do with the topic that we're on. This is like in general. I think one of the, like when you were talking about, you were talking about social media and so forth, that's infecting a lot of the people. I don't think necessarily it's social media. I think algorithms themselves is what really does the damage, because if you actually go down one path, right, and it could be just how you word it, your search,
right?
It'll go down and it'll literally start giving you what you want. You know what I mean? Right. And so I think one of the biggest things for that.
Here's another source, USA Today. I don't know which way they lean at all, but they fact checked the claim that Trump had increased the debt far more than any president in history. Fact check, false. The total federal debt increased more under the Obama administration in terms of raw dollars than any other president, according to government data. So
everybody can look that up.
So
they can do research and figure it out on their own, which they, either way, it's a shit show, right? On the debt side. I do think, again, we were under a global pandemic, scandemic, whatever you want to call it. But and I'm not going to give him a pass on that. What I do know is that he's a better president. I do believe that we had a better economy under Biden. I do believe
Trump.
Under Biden. Yeah.
Under Trump.
That's what you said.
Now you're acting like Biden.
I'm going to cut my own tongue out tonight. Absolutely. So, you know, I do believe that personal freedoms were better under Trump. I do believe that gun rights were better under Trump. You know, I don't know if you know any friends that are, you know, an FFL or whatever else, but if you see how many FFLs are getting, you know, they're getting audited. There's been more FFLs that have given up their FFL than ever before.
Had revoked.
Or had revoked. I mean,
Under the
Second
Biden
Amendment by
administration.
with through the Biden administration, through many different surreptitious efforts, is being eroded like we've never seen. Like the ATF coming out with the pistol brace ban, with the trigger
Think
reset.
about the bump stocks then?
No, the bump stocks was 100% Trump.
Yeah.
That was a problem.
But the engaged in the business rule.
The engaged in business
That's another
rule.
huge one.
If you sell a firearm, you could potentially, it was the Biden administration ATF that just went in Arkansas and killed a dude because they determined that he had sold too many guns and should have been having FFL. So they raided his house in the middle of the night. An executive of an airport raided his house in the middle of the night, broke through, cut his power, treated him like he was a freaking terrorist. And when the guy comes down armed with a gun because somebody's breaking down his door, he gets shot in the face. That's a real problem. And so I do think at the end of the day, the only thing that we can do is pick the least of worst, the least of the evils
issues.
of the
Yes.
evils.
Least evil.
We have problems in this country, and Trump's not going to fix it, but hopefully it will be better than what we are, and maybe we can find a way to prep the objective so that we can start looking for better answers.
I think one of the big things is like what we're doing right now, being able to talk about it, being able to bring this forward. I think one of the biggest things is when you speak about a certain issue that a country is having, our country specifically.
Yeah.
It should not be looked at as the example I like to use is like if I'm a doctor and you're the patient, I said, hey, Gary, you got cancer, we got to cut that out. And then all of a sudden it's like, why do you hate me? Why do you hate America? You're criticizing, I'm criticizing the problem, not the nation. You know what I mean? And I think that's one of the big things that people need to get over is just that when you actually like spotting out something that needs to be fixed, like this isn't like it doesn't encompass everything under the sun. It encompasses literally that one thing. Let's work on this problem, get it fixed so we don't have this problem anymore.
Sorry, I just thought about arguments between husbands and wives where
you're wrong,
where women
Shit
has one problem with me and I'm like, you hate me.
Yeah, that's true. You're crunching too loud. Why do you hate me? I'm curious on your thoughts on this, Alan. Where do you think, because I think we're about the same age. I'm 44. I was born in 80. In the 80s, the 90s, like things weren't like that. Even in the 2000s, things weren't like that. We had a much more unified country. When do you think, and I'll give you my answer on that, when do you think we started seeing a breakdown in discourse and we turned opinions into personal hate?
Honestly, I think is when we started to isolate ourselves. I thought there was a constant rise, starting probably in 2000s, maybe like around 2010. And I think, and again, I'm not solely spotting this. I'm saying probably the easiest thing to spot is social media, because if you and I had this discussion online, I guarantee you would have gone an entirely different direction because there's so misinterpretation of tone. There's a misinterpretation of, and you can't get out so much, when you're typing in a comment, right?
When you lost face interaction.
Yeah. And this is why I'm like such a big believer in social discourse is that I might disagree with you, but at least I can understand where you're coming from. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that's the very minimum that you can actually get away with or get from social discourse is understanding. But I think another thing is that we've, as a nation entirely, have looked to the effects instead of looking at the cause. Right. So we have these problems, but we just keep focusing on these problems, the effects of the problems, versus trying to see where is the cause for these problems. You know what I mean? We have a fentanyl a fentanyl problem, right?
Has a fentanyl project. They're doing well.
They are.
Yeah.
I mean, but what was the root cause of this, right? What caused this entire epidemic, right? And again, we have. And I'm not saying the gun lobby is the strongest lobby by any means, and neither is AIPAC, but it is the pharmaceutical, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have an entire, basically, a lobby group that can literally buy every politician to kind of put up what they want. People are still parroting the same things from Purdue Pharmaceuticals during the whole oxycodone
Yeah,
the
I watched
push,
a
right?
documentary about Purdue and the way they marketed this pill and presented this pill, and it was just atrocious what they did
Yeah.
to the nation.
Well, and then we have, government agencies that, are complicit, like the entire pharmaceutical industry, the entire health industry, and the USDA that, came up with something absolutely idiotic, the worst thing that probably has ever happened in this country, and that is the food pyramid based on freaking carbohydrates.
Yes.
That has done more damage, and no one's ever looked back and said, oh, we were wrong on that. Like, I still haven't seen that. As a matter of fact, they've changed the food pyramid, but it's still a carbohydrate based diet that is absolutely
Yes.
idiotic. And that has caused more obesity, more disease, more diabetes, more reliance on medication. That if you don't sit back, look, food science hasn't changed that much. If you don't think that there are people capable of saying, hey, you know what? Look, let's tell the American people that this is the way they do it, so we can sell more medicine, so we can do more of this, we can have more control. If you don't think that there's a bunch of, if you don't think that, like, they didn't know trans fat weren't heart healthy. Like, I remember looking at Country Crock, that my dad always had, my dad's side of the family, they always had this big thing of Country Crock. And my dad,
Easy.
and then we're like the worst eaters on the planet. But I was like, oh, at least, because it says heart healthy on it.
At least they got that going
I was
for
like,
them.
at least they're doing something. They have a butter substitute, because
Little do they
butter is
know.
bad, meat is bad, eggs are bad, and these are the things that are going to kill you. It's like
They're literally eating the thing.
we are either so stupid, or we have real intelligent folks working against us at a level that we are not able to perceive, that I don't know what else to say.
I think it goes back to most people don't have reliable sources they can turn to, especially back then. You didn't have the internet where you could go search out all this information for yourself.
I know.
You don't, especially poor people or.
Well, that's my point, is like, now we can look back and say, you know what, the USDA, the entire health industry, and the government, like, they got it so wrong that they should have no credibility ever fucking again. And yet that's the first time that we have a pandemic. Like, oh, you need to put on these masks, and you know what? You need to make sure you're arm's length away from somebody, because it's going to protect you. Like, we've turned these masks, Democrats turn these masks into like amulets from the dark ages. Like, if I wear this, it's
Call it an amulet.
yeah, it's going to protect me against like pestilence and evil spirits if I wear this. I mean, that's where we were on this. But man,
I thought you meant that people back then, when they accepted this information, were dumb.
No.
What my point was
No,
that
I'm
they
saying
didn't,
we
they
know
didn't have
now.
any sources.
You're 100. We were easily manipulated. We had no
Right.
credible way to like say, hey, this was wrong. But we know now
Sure.
that, like, you guys got it wrong.
And people
every
still
single
refuse
time.
to believe, though.
Yeah, they do. They do. Like, you know what?
You eat meat, you're gonna die.
Goddamn right.
Anyway.
Only red.
I'm sure.
Alan, I don't know if you
Only
know,
red
Alan is
meat.
a vegetarian.
Only red meat, by the way.
Yeah.
Alan's
You're
a
gonna die.
vegetarian. Thanks for hurting his feelings.
I didn't say
No,
anything against vegetarians. I said if you eat meat, you're gonna die.
I don't know what he eats. I don't really care.
He's just sitting there like, these people are freaking crazy. That's what he's thinking.
That's the
Anyway.
that's the new pyramid, by the way.
Oh, it looks fancy.
Yeah.
There's no don't eat so much and don't
Sorry,
eat so
Alan,
little.
we really go off the rails
The
with
least
the end of
amount of
this.
thing is meats.
Is
The
the
least amount of thing
that's
is
slip-
meats.
is that
The most
sliver-
amount of thing is grains.
Oh, you damn right.
That's the old one. That's the one that they've been pushing
No,
after
that
World
is-
War II.
This is the new
It's
one.
the new one. It doesn't even do it like horizontal lines. They're
All the
all
lines are
vertical.
vertical.
they're just wider or skinnier.
Yeah.
Oh Jesus!
But still, it's the majority of the diet is
Do not eat meats and beans.
Yeah.
Together.
cancer.
Yeah.
Cancer, global warming.
Eat some good milk and
The highest
That's in order.
and this is something that I've done research on. Was the highest contributor to cancer is sugar. And if you notice, like everything, and
Absolutely.
it's the most addictive thing that's on there. And you'll literally see, if you look on the back of the nutrition facts and on pretty much everything that is packaged, you'll see added sugar.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, but then you think, who does that, and again, cause and effect, who does that benefit, right? It definitely benefits the medical industry. right? Because the cure is definitely way less profitable than treatment.
Yep.
So you got to see like how many other like people is this going to affect all around.
Yeah.
You know, there was no type of cancer in my on my father's side, no type of cancer on my mother's side, right? My uncle passed away from pancreatic cancer, but he was working X-rays, you know, since like the late 60s, 70s. So that's understandable. My father got a very rare type of cancer in 2017. And he went literally from, you know, he was running 4 or 5 miles a day or on his bike, you know, 15, 16 miles a day. And I mean, every day he was doing one of the other two. And then he went from a complete clean bill of health, had his physical like 2 months prior, a complete clean bill of health, completely healthy, won the Italian racquetball championship. And within 2 weeks, he was stage 4.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And so that really kind of like the entire conversation that we're having right now made me do a deep dive into research and like what could have caused that. I mean, he passed away within 6 months.
Wow.
So I mean, there was like a whole type of thing, and so that like this is where I started getting information from, like the sugars, right?
Yeah.
And then I started looking at that, and then I started thinking, what about meats? You know, and so what I did with the most beneficial thing for me, I went vegan for about 9 months, and then I reintroduced meats. And the best thing that happened for me though is actually finding out that I actually do much better with game, like buffalo instead of beef. Like my digestion process and everything else, like my entire performance as an athlete was way better with like buffalo instead of turkey, having ostrich,
That's interesting.
with deer meat, you know. And so I reintroduced all these meats like one week at a time, and then took a break for a week, and I reintroduced all the meats, but I cleared everything out of my system and then went back to meats. And that's what I found out for myself. So now I have like a freezer full of like game, you know, and that was the most beneficial. But I think, and another interesting point, when I was in the West Bank, I ate bread every day. And I'm talking like, you know, 4 or 5 pieces of pita at breakfast. They don't use like utensils. They dip everything in bread, the chicken, everything, you know, in bread. And I lost weight. But also they just use, it's fresh baked every day. There's no sugar added to it. You know, it's literally the basic, you know, ingredients without the chemicals, right?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I was, you know, where my last job, I did a lot of work where I was traveling from embassy, you know, going to embassies and consulate, doing some security work. And, you know, I was spending a lot of time in Africa, and, you know, the food there, like I would eat, first of all, chickens there, like, they're like, I don't know, they're like a quarter of the size of our chickens. But that chicken was like alive like 2 hours ago.
How fucking good did it taste?
It was amazing. The food was great. But what I, you know, what one thing, and this may be a little TMI, like I barely shit. Like I would eat like all this food, and then like I would take like these little like woman shits, like little freaking little rabbit shits. I'm like, where did all the food go? Because if I'd have ate that amount of food, I'd like freaking, I'd be all backed up.
In
and
the
I
US?
felt so much better. And you know, I was working out over there and eating that. Like there wasn't all this food that was chemically freaking enhanced.
Your body was able to utilize it all.
Yeah, 100%.
There was not nearly as much
Either
waste.
that or it's still in my body. I don't know, but one of the two happened.
Yeah.
If you look at also like the fast food industry that's like dominating the United States more than anything else, in Iceland, they have in a glass enclosure, the very last McDonald's meal, right?
Yeah.
And it looks identical.
Yeah.
And it's like 20 years old.
Yeah,
It hasn't changed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
Well, listen, Alan, we covered a lot tonight. And most importantly, I think, you know, we spent the last 30, 40 minutes or so talking about stuff that we 100% agree on. So I think that's the thing that's important. No, listen, I really appreciate you coming on. And I really enjoyed hearing your perspective. You know, it was just good to have you on, and it was good to get to know you a little bit and get to know a little bit more about you, who you are. Hopefully either I'll get down there and we'll be able to meet in person sometime. If you're up ever in the DC area, you know, we got an extra bed for you up there. I'll take you over to our range and we'll go have some fun. But
outstanding.
But really appreciate you, and I appreciate you coming on tonight, man.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate it. It's been a great time.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, listen, if you ever need anything, you know how to reach me. Don't be a stranger. And yeah, we appreciate it. Hang tight. We'll say goodbye, but I'm going to go ahead and take him off the stream real quick. Folks, I know this is probably one of our longest ever, but that's okay. I appreciate those of you that hung out with us. You know, again, we always appreciate your support. We appreciate you showing up here on Wednesday. And, you know, what's cool to see is that our podcast, number one, we are getting a lot more people on them. And on top of that, they're getting a lot more views after they're posted, both on Rumble and YouTube. But we do appreciate the support. And we got a lot of cool stuff coming out. We got courses coming up. We'll be working on next year's training calendar very soon. I want to get that up sooner than later, and not be, you know, working into the spring trying to get some stuff up like we did this year. We'll do better with that. But we appreciate the support. Buy anything you need. You know what we sell. Go to ParamountTactical.com.
Cool shit.
But anyways, until next time, stay armed. You gotta hit the button. Are you gonna screw up this timing, babe? Hit the button
right now.
Yep, hit the button.
Oh, gotcha.
Until next time, stay armed,